Oh, Arthur is a thief from a different RPG who got transported into a new RPG he has no idea of. Oh, he is knowledgeable of the rules and plot lines of classic RPG, which gives him an edge in exploring this new land. He's very genre savvy. While trying to avoid the prophecies a random outsider like him could flag, he chanced upon a sword. The surprise? The sword can talk. The plot twist? The sword cursed him. To download Arthur now, go to cypherica.itch.io/Arthur. That's sypherica.itch.io/Arthur.
Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now listening to RPG Maker Cola.
Hey RPG Maker Cola listeners, welcome to RPG Maker Cola Season 2. Think of this as that recreational room where you can talk and reminisce about the old days of RPG Maker, and the new days too, while still looking forward to what's to come. Of course, we're not outdated, but yes, we're ancient and we're also modern and futuristic, and RPG Maker can do anything, even 3D MMORPGs. But at the end of the day, this right here is your fizzy, soda-filled source of content for game development opinions that mean very little in the grand scheme of things. It's your favorite RPG Maker podcast, RPG Maker Cola. I'm your host Benny, also known as Cash, also known as the Puzzle Snob, and this is the place for you. It's a chill space where we get together skilled developers from the RPG Maker community to chat cordially and occasionally non-cordially about game development, game design, and probably a whole bunch of unrelated other stuff too. It's casual, it's cool, it's Cola. Today I have 3 guests. Very good guests, all 3 of them, and they've all contributed to the evolution of RPG Maker as an engine on the scripting level and otherwise on a very fundamental level. They've played incredibly important roles in helping shape the engine. In fact, I'd wager highly that the RPG Maker engine series wouldn't look the same at all if it weren't for our 3 guests today.
But to get into that history, we're going to have to go back in time to the year 2003. It is the 2003. And the game development sphere is empty until RPG Maker 2003 was released. Based upon the blueprints of the elderly old scrolls of RPG Maker 2000, this new engine built upon the groundwork of those features and included a new system, a side view active battle system, and additional database options. However, that did not include everything developers wanted to do. Some things remained unintuitive, and the documentation scrolls did not foretell, and there were sometimes patches needed for the system. But this seemed like a task not all developers were cut up for. They cowered defenselessly behind their walls of non-patching, the Dark Lord of Inflexibility stopping their tracks, until that fateful day when it appeared like a ghost on the horizon. DynRPG. Started in 2012, a plugin SDK for the engine that allowed developers to create their own extensions to the engine base and provided the basis for far more powerful extensions than ever before. DynRPG extends the RPG Maker 2003 engine to allow for elements, layouts, values, and functions to change that which was previously unassailable, breaking the limitations and freeing the developers from their prisons into the light, providing the ability to craft plugins that developers could use easily and safely, allowing for any functionality like custom menus, wild battle systems, Xbox controller support, OpenGL rendering, anti-lag, non-standard character sizes, and even more recently, Twitch integration? What is this sorcery? This sorcery, my friend, is DynRPG. DynRPG.
The battle systems, Xbox controller support, OpenGL rendering, non-standard character set color blending to anti-lag, swapping out of the row command, non-standard visual gauges sizes, the battle systems, Xbox controller swapping out of the row command, OpenGL visual gauges, non-standard character set sizes. Literally, with DynRPG, the world was now your oyster. All three of our guests today have been involved with DynRPG and earlier iterations and influences in one way or another, either creating plugins or the architecture underneath. To be honest, I'm not completely sure how it all works, but I know that it does, because plenty of notable 2K3 games have used DynRPG. In fact, it may have been hard to find an original RPG Maker 2003 game with advanced functionality that didn't use it. But the first guest I'd like to introduce seems to have spearheaded much of that initial operation, including work on a whole bunch of other projects such as RPG Maker 2009 Ultimate, an executable that loads any RPG Maker 2000 and something editor and injects itself into it, modifying it and providing it with many flexible features. They were also hired on board the team to help develop the English version of RPG Maker 2003 alongside Archaea, providing the world with the engine that had only been officially accessible to Japan for 12 years. They also provide their continual support to help make the program awesome. Things like resizing windows, using variables in fields where it wasn't present before, and among a ton of other changes made after release. In fact, there's just too much to mention. This person has done so much behind the scenes, often unnoticed, and however, the name remains the same to those who are in the know. I'd like to introduce our first guest today, someone very special who I'm very grateful for. It's Cherry.
Hi, I'm Cherry, my real name is David Trapp. I prefer the German pronunciation, actually. And I just had my 28th birthday last week. I'm a software developer, not only in hobby space, but I also made it my profession. And I really, really enjoy making it possible for others to basically to make something or to fulfill their desires and like to create. So I love enabling others to create what they really want to create.
I think you've succeeded in that as well, and we're very thankful for what you've done to enable us to do that. Yeah, thanks Cherry for the introduction. Let's move on to our next guest. Our second guest has also worked with DynRPG, creating plugins throughout the process that help beef up the library that was not present before they had joined. Cherry had started the project in 2012, however our second guest, to my knowledge, got heavily interested in DynRPG and eventually took it over in early 2015. They created their own plugin emporium and other initiatives to boost the number of plugins along the way, alongside a community member known as BugMeNot, increasing the size of the features added to the library threefold. Along with contributing magnificently to the DynRPG fold, they also pursued their own game-making passion, creating a game named Everlasting Journey, using many of the enhancements of DynRPG, where you play a character named Sparrow. You've just been fired from your job for poor performance and your life is going nowhere when you are greeted one day by a girl who needs help and by chance has found you. Knowing that this will lead to bigger and much greater things, you play along and eventually get sucked into the biggest adventure of your life. As a team, you help to stop a fiendish plot set forth by your new rival, the insane and evil Paul. It will be a race against time to save the world from the clutches of evil. And this game seems to channel an infectious and exploratory vibe of adventure, treasure, and maybe some cheeky poke of fun at RPG cliches. They are also now currently creating Outer Transmission, a retro racing game with modern C++. I'm extremely proud to have this person on the podcast. It's PepsiOtaku.
How's it going? I feel so seen right now. So my name is PepsiOtaku. Real name's Andrew King. And I've been a part of the RPG Maker community in some way for a long time, since RPG Maker 95, actually. But Everlasting Journey it literally started in RPG Maker 95. That build is long gone. I basically got it in RPG Maker 2000 and then updated it in 2003, probably around like 2005-ish was when I started working on it more seriously. And just kind of kept building on it from there. And so it kind of stopped in 2016 or so to start working on game engines in my racing game.
Very interesting. I'd like to hear more about that. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Our final guest is a veteran of sorts of the RPG Maker community. I started with DynRPG because that's what everyone knows, but people may also know of this other patch that started perhaps earlier and was influential in the process, being a part of the Multimedia Access community, having also been active in the RPG Atelier community for 20 years. This is the creator of the MP3 patch for RPG Maker 2000, and then a very famous Ineluki Key Patch, one of the most famous patches for RPG Maker that allows you to use all keys on the keyboard, including mouse, in RPG Maker games. Also having worked on the PDF magazine Maker's Mind, which had articles on RPG Maker games, preview reports and interviews, as well as creating the game Revenge of the Mummy. They were a pioneer in how they approached scripting and patching RPG Maker, allowing many to make games with newly flexible input and inspiring scripters to come. I'm very thankful to have this scripter on board this podcast. I'd like to introduce the highly influential scripter and person just in general. It's Ineluki.
Hi there, I'm Ineluki, and in my real life I'm Dr. Dominik Vondrosh. Maybe I've been the oldest one in this bunch, with 40 years on my back. So, yeah, I started programming, around 1990. Had mostly some programming things on my own, no big projects or so, and, the biggest project I had for some time was the MP3 patch back in 2002, I guess, 2003 maybe. Since then, I'm involved with the German RPG Maker community. I was moderator in the Multimedia Access forum, and organized community events for the German Maker community. Yeah, that's what I'm visiting up until today. And thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We're all very appreciative. And thank you to all three of our guests. Now that we've been introduced to them, we're going to go to our first section. It's the Buzz Corner. Welcome to the Buzz Corner. Here we talk about what RPG Maker games are gaining buzz at the moment, or it could have been a little while ago. I've asked each of our guests to bring one game they talk about that they're pretty interested in. They don't have to have played it, just has to look interesting to them. I'm going to bring a game called Cover Your Eyes by StarSkipp. Now, StarSkipp has been creating this game for a while. It used to go under the name Promiscuous, but then it got changed back to Cover Your Eyes. This game is sort of like a Resident Evil kind of zombie shooter created in RPG Maker XP, and it's very moody. I played it about the first hour of this game, and it executes a sort of horrific and oppressive atmosphere very well. It also executes exploration of city environments. You go about looting and finding different ammos and items scattered throughout the city as you sort of shoot for your life, but it's not the type of shooting game where you can shoot tons and tons of bullets and then all the enemies will die, because you have to conserve your ammo, you have to conserve your resources and make sure that you aren't overwhelmed by just sort of running around with nothing to defend yourself. The developer describes it as a traumatic 2D top-down survival horror experience, focusing upon family and the sacrifices we make to keep them safe. With 2 children under your care, you'll have to fight, think, and escape out of escalating circumstances as the town of Verwood undergoes an unprecedented metamorphosis. So basically, you are a mother trying to protect your 2 children and confront your past in the process. I think this is a very well executed game. I recommend anyone to go and buy it. I think it was a little bit underappreciated upon release, and I'd just like to bring a little buzz to that. It's Cover Your Eyes by StarSkipp. Cherry, what game is buzzing for you at the moment?
For me, what's totally buzzing at the moment is Theia the Crimson Eclipse by Undead Games. I have to say I didn't actually play it myself, but I watched German Let's Play by Eternal Games, which was the whole 51 episodes of between half an hour and an hour each. Oh, wow. So it's a pretty massive game, and it's actually an RPG Maker 2003 game, which incidentally does use DynRPG, although the author patched out my splash screen. It's fine. Instead, he put me in the credits. I have to say the splash screen is a bit annoying, so I probably would do it differently today. Anyway, the game is for me just like a very, very impressive RM2K3 game, and I have to say at the moment, I would say it's like the best I know at the moment, because it's just it has an intriguing story which never stops surprising me and also moving me emotionally, and the delivery of the story, the way everything is executed, it's just superb. There has been so much attention to detail. There are so many great custom animations, and everything is just on such a high level. It's really an experience. And actually today, after I recommended it to him, a friend of mine started playing it. A friend who always was a little bit dismissive of RPG Maker games, and he said, "Wow, I would actually pay money for that. I didn't expect that." Yeah. It's a really great game, which also just has a huge world, tons of characters, tons of very believable characters, even. And many interesting gameplay elements, and just a great game overall, in my opinion. It's about a world in the future where, after the world had to convert all the technology to a new energy source, but that energy source then also turned out to be not available indefinitely. And then while they were trying to find a solution for that, they sort of like reverted to the old system of having empires and things like that. And this is when the story begins about the person who was previously a vanguard. That's like their army. And but he's now being chased by those, and we don't really know yet what is going on, and it just unfolds from that moment on. And when some weird red crystals start appearing in the world and wreaking some havoc.
Yeah, this game looks amazing. I love the lighting systems. I love the way that it all kind of comes together, and the tiles and how they're all used together. It looks visually arresting. I really like the look of it. Apparently it's like about that energetic crisis, as you're saying, where there's like red crystals that could kind of end the emergency, but you have to discover the mystery behind everything that's happening. It's sort of about intrigue and stuff. I'm yet to play it as... I mean, I haven't watched a video of it, but I hear everything about this game. It won all the Masao Awards, like so many of them, and which are like the RPGmaker.net version of the Oscars per se. And yeah, apparently this is like really good.
I can tell you it will keep you on your toes until the very end. And actually the very end of the story isn't the end of the game. There's so much to explore afterwards too. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Theia is apparently a great game. Yeah. How about Ineluki? What are your highlights? What's buzzing for you at the moment?
Well, at the moment is a very strange time for this, for I'm not playing so much, but I have picked some gems from the past. Well, the way back past, from the early 2000s. I want to give some highlights of the, well, mostly German RM2K Maker community, and with one exception, they have been made in Germany, and so maybe they are not so well known to the general audience. I have to apologize, some of these titles are in German only, but I will point out which ones are in German only and which ones are in English only, and I think they deserve their own spotlight. Yeah, so if this is okay, I will start. The first one I want to present is a very polished game, which is Unterwegs in Düsterburg, which is, let's roughly translate it as Travels in Düsterburg, which is a game made by Grandy. It's a rather complicated story, intriguing, with vampires, with dark forces. You accompany our hero with his and his teammates, which he finds along the way. You travel through several parts, and you are drawn very quickly into the story, but I do not want to spoil too much.
Apparently it's got like vampire and stuff in there.
Yeah. So more or less this is the presentable game from the German maker community, I'd say. If one has to name one, I think a lot of people would pick that.
They should translate it. I wonder if there's a translated to English version, or maybe that someone should do that.
Yeah, someone should. But as far as I know, no one has
Easier
yet.
said than done, yeah.
Yeah, no one has it done.
Maybe.
Just to point out, it's not Vampire's Dawn.
Oh, okay.
Even though it has vampires. That's also a game many people would think of otherwise.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, but I'd prefer Unterwegs in Düsterburg.
Me too.
By a long shot. Because it's the more mature game, I'd say. Well, it was presented several years after Vampire's Dawn. So, yeah, the community has grown since then. Well, the next one is also very, very polished. And it's called Die Reise ins All of Real Troll. It's also only available in German, unfortunately. But it's a story about a journey to the moon and beyond that. In the fashion of Jules Verne's Journey to the Moon. And it's not an adaptation of this base material per se, but it draws of the general idea. It has very likable characters, really, really neat graphics, very fun jokes, and the like. The character dialogues are excellent, and I'd say this is one of the best games the German community has to offer.
I like the sprites. I like how comedic it looks, and there's probably some comedic elements, some funny kind of jokes and slapstick.
Yeah, but it's also very serious, so it's marvelous. Yeah,
it really is.
The next one I'd like to present is Moonshine, which is Moonshine by Annie Kuhn. This is a story about of a guy named Finn. The game begins with him being an old man, and he has to look back to his life, where he crashed on a foreign planet. With his spaceship, and wasn't able to repair it. And it has its own battle system. It has an intriguing storyline. Yeah, and I do not want to spoil it too much. So everyone has to discover it for himself.
The tile sets look great in this as well.
Yeah, very classic.
Lots of very nice tile sets.
Yeah, the next one is in English. It's called Aurora Wing, and it's of the author of the same name, and it's a very interesting game in its way that it's more like a strategic game combined with an RPG, because the battle system, the fighting system of the game is a tactic-based fighting system where you have to place your units so that they can walk and encounter the other ones. So this is pretty unique.
Within the game, it doesn't look like it was created in RPG Maker at all. It looks all custom.
but it's RPG Maker 2000.
That's great.
So all games are RPG Maker 2000.
Yeah.
And therefore they have a lot of limitations.
Right.
Yeah. Then I have one again, which is only available in German, unfortunately, even though it has an English title, which is Sunset over Imdahl by Theo Madlein and Knoppe. And it uses the RPG Maker in a very interesting way. It's an adventure game, so like point-and-click adventure game, where the tile sets are all transparent. There is no tile other than transparency. And they're using the parallax backgrounds with hand-drawn graphics to render the world, and using pictures to put things in front and in the back. And there you can see that you can do a lot with the engine, even though you're using it very minimalistically. And also it has a very intriguing story about a boy named Lone who visits his hometown, which was under siege, and the town is absolutely empty. Everyone, and he meets one guy, and he says that everyone died by the plague, and then a portal is opened and allows him to travel back in time to see what has happened or why everything happened in this way, and he tries to prevent that.
Yeah, actually, I will say that it was released in English as well. So anyone who wants to play it as well. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's very good, though.
Yeah.
It was even originally released in English, I think, by the developer before he himself released the German version.
Oh.
Yeah, yes. Well, then I only encountered the German version.
That's cool.
Yeah. The ones I presented until now were completed games, and now I have 2 demos, which I'm very, very unhappy that they were never finished.
Yeah.
Both are in English. The first one I want to present is Vortex by Koa Angel. And it's a point-and-click adventure written with the RPG Maker 2000, and it was first game to use mouse support. Yeah, I know that because Koa Angel asked me back in 2003, I guess, if I could write or extend the MP3 patch of mine to support mouse movements and clicking and the likes. In this regard, this game was more or less influential.
Very important,
even though it was just a demo.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're crashed with a spaceship, and you have to investigate what happened and attacked by foreign life forms and the likes.
It's very similar to Metroid, I suppose. It looks like visually quite similar to the side-scrolling format.
Yes, something like that. And the last one I want to highlight is A Blurred Line by Lysander86, which is a very classic sci-fi RPG Maker game with a very intriguing storyline, a custom fighting system again. Well, at least it modifies the standard system heavily in this regard, so that it's based that you learn your magic spells by observing your enemies and learning spells from them. Until you master this thing. Yeah, you begin as a normal worker, which is summoned to the boss of the company, and on your arrival, he kills himself with a gunshot, and now you're a big suspect in this dystopian sci-fi world, and it really crafts a good atmosphere in doing so. And I'm really unhappy that this game was never finished.
I think a lot of people are. This is actually the first RPG Maker game I ever played. So this is a very influential game. This one got me into game making, actually. This game started my journey. And I believe for many others it would have been one of their first games they played. This is a very influential game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I'm preaching to the prophets.
A very good game to bring, yeah.
Yeah. So this were my highlights.
It's a good survey of the German developing community and a lot of the games that have been popular, as well as some others within RPG Maker 2000. And thanks for bringing those games. Go and check it out. Everybody go check all those games out.
I have to admit that, of course, A Blurred Line wasn't made in the German community. This was the exception I mentioned in the beginning. So, just to clarify that.
The one exception.
The one exception.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So, PepsiOtaku, you've got a game you'd like to bring today. What's buzzing for you at the moment?
Yeah, so there's this cool game called Blood and Grime by Momeka, who has kind of posted like screenshots and like short little video clips on Twitter and the screenshot topic for a while now, I think. And it's like a completely custom game that he's writing in Monogame. It's like a framework for C#, and it looks really cool. I always love his projects because they're all very like, it's like crisp pixel art, just really well put together and stuff like that. So they're always like really surprising. So like, he's done like a bunch of little games over the years. There's this one called like Glimpse. There was like this weird little puzzle game that I played years ago, and I was just like, oh man, this is great. I've been following that developer for years now, I think. But so this game looks really cool. It's like a old 3D dungeon crawler kind of thing, and it looks like it's coming along quite nicely. And
yeah, I mean the art in this is amazing. Like it's like one of those dungeon crawlers of the old days where you kind of walk around, and it looks like the maze kind of screensaver in Windows, like the old one.
Totally.
Yeah, but with like Momeka creates one thing about Momeka that's really good to know is that they create excellent gameplay. Like their games
like really.
Their games look really good. Like you that's the first thing that you notice about them, but what people probably don't realize is when they start to play, it's actually backed up by some really solid gameplay principles. If you've played Grimp's A Christmas Puzzle, you know, like, these are very well-designed puzzles. And that's probably one of the things I'm most jealous of Momeka about, is that not only do they create great visuals, but it's backed by great gameplay as well. And it makes me frustrated and jealous.
Definitely. Same here. I'm just like, I'm always like a visuals first kind of person, and that's kind of been my Achilles heel, I guess. And like when I see something like this, I'm just like, man, like every little mechanic was thought out, and it just works, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, down to the animations and the UI elements and everything. It's just like a lot of care gets put into a Momeka game.
Yep.
And apparently it's a first-person dungeon crawl game where you create a party of 3 scavengers and set out to explore the planet of Grime, scavenge ancient ruins, visit friendly settlements, do quests, and talk to a surgeon who might replace your arms with tentacles. Fight monsters and men with ill intents and a turn-based menu combat system. So yeah, this is like a pretty nice, like, old school looking game and a menu combat system. We'll see what that looks like. I'm not too sure.
I wonder if it's like what's that game that came out a couple of years ago? Kingsway?
Oh yeah, I've played Kingsway. I finished Kingsway. I quite like that game. Yeah.
I wonder if it's something like that.
Yeah, it was an innovative game using like old school looking UI, and use the UI in Windows to great effect. But, yeah, that might have some influence. Yeah, so that's what's buzzing for us at the moment in the Buzz Corner. Great. We are going to move to our next section, which is We've Been Playing Games. Maybe? Hey, have you been playing games? Yes, you. I'm pointing to you, passerby. If not, that's all cool. But if so, you can listen here, as each of us talk about a game we've been currently playing or have played, and explain what we like about it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to bring a game called Inside by Playdead. Inside's a beautiful game that tells a story of a brave young man who sets off traveling through treacherous terrain and large, murky buildings. Just as it is beautiful, it is also quite grim as well, and a sort of very atmospheric and dark game. As he explores, he discovers a race of dull people who reflect what we as a society may imminently be turning into. It's a unique story that just absolutely intrigued me and had me wanting more. The gameplay is based on survival of a character in a side-scrolling environment that depends on solving some situational puzzles. But one of the things I really wanted to point out is it's just got amazing sound design, and just it incredibly increases the atmosphere. There's one part in particular, it's a minor spoiler, where sound is used immensely, where this sound from very far away just emits these massive pulsations of great sound that will knock you to smithereens if you aren't behind walls. So you'll go behind a wall and you'll wait there, and then you'll hear a big whoom, and then it will echo across the atmosphere and then sort of decimate everything in its path, and then you have to start running again. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. There's a lot of this game that's terrifying and grim, and then at the end it takes an interesting turn that might be a little bit what's it called? A little bit divisive to some, but I think in the end, the creation of this dystopian world is just an absolutely immersive experience, and I'd encourage everybody to check it out. It's Inside by Playdead. Has anyone played this game? No?
I think I might have it on Steam, but I haven't played it.
It's very good. Yeah, Cherry, what have you been playing lately? Maybe?
Well, I have been playing lately the game called Sea of Thieves by the game studio Rare, and it's basically a first-person multiplayer video game in which you assume the role of a pirate. So you're sailing the seas, the Sea of Thieves, which means you're doing what pirates do, shooting ships down and stealing their treasure, but also uncovering mysteries of other long dead, or maybe not, pirates, fighting skeletons. Well, I'm not sure if the pirates actually did that back then, but anyway, you live the pirate life, including things like drinking grog or playing some musical instrument, although if you combine the two, the result sounds little bit weird. And it actually does. And those sort of things are what I really like about this game, that you sort of like, it's really immersive in that respect, that like you and your crew, which by the way is like your friends whom you can invite into your party, are sailing on the ship. Everyone has like assumes some role, although it's not fixed, like it's something we have to discuss between each other, who is steering the ship, who is watching out, or who is checking if we are still on course or whatever,
Cannons.
or who is manning the cannons, who is repairing the damage if we're taking some. But there are also those great moments where you just like sail in the wide open sea. There is maybe a sunset even, or something nice, and you're just like standing on deck and all like playing on your instruments, and it has this sort of open world feeling in the best way that you can get it, I think. The only thing I sort of like don't like about it is that the PvP aspect of it is like mandatory, because it's like that you have a world which shared between, I'm not sure how many, maybe 3 or 4 parties, and you don't know what those other parties are up to, if they're going to attack you or not, and there is no way, unfortunately, if you just feel like a nice just you and your friends playing the game, and maybe having some fights with some AI ships, but not actually players who may even partly like exploit some weird ways of getting you. That can be annoying. I would love to have an option to turn PvP on and off, and if I put it off, I'm alone on the world. I think that would be great. But I read on the forums that others disagree, because it's a game about pirates, and so it should be like an essential part of the gameplay. I'm not so sure about it. It also ruined some evenings for us. But overall, I think it's a nice game.
I also disagree with them. Yeah, I think it should it should be an option.
Especially since players respawn after a short time on their ship, while of course AI enemies won't. So if you have players who just like are better in certain in their ability, I mean, luckily there is no leveling in the game, so that you can have actually people who are just stronger in their base stats. It's just about like actual game experience as a player. But you have them respawning all the time, and then just waiting for you at some point, and cutting you down again and stuff like that. They can
like be a bit of bully. Maybe they can be, make it a bad experience.
There are some people who like abuse the thing that if you use the sit or sleep emoji, it's like your character does that in game. Then at certain places you may partly clip into the wall and stuff like that, and you are less likely to be seen, and you can be like on board of another ship and they don't see you, and that's slightly annoying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Otherwise, I really enjoy the game.
So yeah, they should implement a peaceful mode. Well, a non-PvP mode.
Right.
It sounds like. But yeah, I like that idea. And you go around getting bananas, coconuts, mangoes, and wood planks, and repairing your ship. And if you want to, you can destroy other players in a server. But I mean, it's mandatory now, so it's kind of sad. But yeah, it sounds like a great game. I haven't played it yet. Ineluki, what games have you been playing lately?
Well, I want to present 2 games. One AAA title and one of a small indie studio, which share to some extent a similar topic, but deal with the technicalities in a different way. So first, I want to present Telltale's The Wolf Among Us, which might everybody have played it. I guess so. And the other one is Werewolves the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest, by a small Polish studio named Different Tales. And which is a storyline. I'd say it's more like a solo game of Werewolves the Apocalypse from the World of Darkness.
It's like a visual novel, eh? It's like
yeah. So it's a solo game and a visual novel share very similar traits. And I'd say the visual part is not so important in this game because it's more setting the atmosphere, but it's not really like characters talking to another via big graphics and the likes. So it's a lot of reading. So in both you're playing a character which can turn into a wolf, obviously, but that's not the point I want to talk about. It's how both games are dealing with consequences. So, may I have a spoiler in the Wolf Among Us part?
Yeah, sure. Let's just say spoiler here. If anyone hasn't played The Wolf Among Us, then and would like to keep spoilers to a minimum, perhaps skip forward maybe a couple minutes.
Yeah. So, which is very typical of Telltale games, they have really good storytelling, they have marvelous graphics, but they do not have consequences. At least it feels like one does not have consequences in the game. Yes, you have to do decisions, you have some quick time events and the likes, but and maybe then you get a pop-up, this character may remember this, or the likes, or you get a slightly different cutscene, but whatever you do, the story is the same. It progresses whatever you do, even to some extent that you play the good guy always, and then you are blamed for beating someone down, which you did not beat down, or that you are accused of doing bad things, which you haven't. And even when you play for allocating money to save a special character, in the end, he will not accept the money, or he will accept it, but he has to deal with bad consequences nonetheless. And so, this is a bit frustrating from a point of view of replayability. You do not see this while playing it the first time, but if you're playing the second time to get all the achievements and the likes, it's turning out obvious that there is no branching in the storytelling. Total opposite is in Heart of the Forest, which is really like such fighting fantasy game books I read as in my youth, where you, if you want to go left, read at paragraph 256. If you want to turn right, read at paragraph 7. And if you want to fight the ogre, then you die.
I used to hate those dead pages. There was always, you look forward and you're like, oh no, there's an ending there, you know.
But those books are most of the time they're really branching out. Okay, you have some focus elements at focal points in which the story converges again. But if you're trying to play this game and you like a little bit of cheating and you want to have a peek how everything is developing, you end up with 10 fingers in the book trying to keep track where you were.
Yeah.
And with Heart of the Forest, it's similar. The game feels very different from when you change your decisions. And with my first playthrough, I was a little bit disappointed with the game because it cuts short in some aspects, in which so when the story is getting interesting from the meta perspective of a werewolf, the Apocalypse game, I think it's no spoiler that's dealing with werewolves, and you turn into one, but soon after you're transformed, the game ends. So it's more like a prelude to whatever is coming.
Oh, right.
And it will be that there will be follow-up games where you can import your character also. I do not know. But
you were looking forward to some raging and crashing and smashing as a werewolf.
Not especially raging, because I have never played this path yet.
Oh,
but
right.
I'm always a nice werewolf for the first playthrough.
Always good to be a nice werewolf.
Yeah, that's charming. So the fluffy ones. But you really by taking the path through your decisions, you can really change the outcome.
Yeah.
Characters die. Characters disappear then, or you do not know beforehand what impact some decisions might have, and the impact is not immediate. But it might be 2 hours later. The sum of your consequences will change the outcome of your storyline, even in ways you do not want it to be.
Yeah.
So that's a really good game in this regard, and yeah, it really frequently branches, and your decisions really matter. And even though this is a very small studio, this is something from which games like The Wolf Among Us could really benefit and really learn something. I know with AAA titles and the likes, graphics is very important. In video cutscenes and the likes are very expensive, and you have to voice synchronize and the likes. But this is really expensive, and so I know this can't be done, but the amount in which The Wolf Among Us limits decisions is disappointing to the other extreme. And at least give us some consequences in this regard. And or cut down on some of this dilemma, pun intended, because Wolf Among Us deals with dilemmas. To get the money to branch off a little bit.
I'd like to make a little comment on that as well, because I see that, like, the Wolf Among Us doesn't have, per se, a large amount of choice and a large amount of consequences, whereas Werewolf, the Apocalypse Heart of the Forest seems to be one of those visual novels that does have consequences, but perhaps sacrifices some of the visually stunning nature of, and the sort of cinematic beats of Wolf Among Us. I have purchased a game, but not yet played it yet, who I think, from the looks of things, combines them both in a kind of Planescape Torment way, and that is Disco Elysium. I haven't yet played it, but it seems to have that novelistic kind of aspect where you can choose whatever you want to do, and then you make kind of D&D type rolls to make sure whether it succeeds or not, and it's got full voice acting as well, but also apparently there is a lot of branching story. I'm not sure how too much, but I think it seems like they simplified the graphics to a kind of top-down perspective, but also still provided some form. So I think it's a balance between, crafting cinematic scenes down to the very last little detail as if it were a film, or going the other direction, which is simplifying the graphics and providing a greater sense of choice. I think you have to do either one or the other, or be somewhere along that spectrum.
Sounds awesome. So yeah, I heard of Disco Elysium and I have it on my wish list. So if anyone wants to give it, no. But I know, or I can relate to that. Yeah. And it sounds really good to hear from you that it's going in the right direction.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's a choice. It's a very good choice to keep in mind. I still love Telltale games, though, because they tell such wonderful stories. But you're right, the choice is sometimes lacking. Pepsi.
Yes.
What games have you been playing lately? Maybe?
Yeah, there's a bunch. So I've been playing Animal Crossing. That's like ongoing for the past like year, I think. Starting to play that less and less. There's like and I've been playing Among Us. Enough said. That's been like it's been like kind of the online game I play with a few friends of mine every week, basically since like October. There's a little game called Pixross that Kenny put out. Kenny's like he's like a big asset maker, so he basically makes all these like neat little assets that you can get on itch.io and things like that. To make games with. And I think this is like his first like game that he's put out. But it's basically Picross, and it's on PC, so it's nice to be able to just play a Picross game and chill out.
Yeah, it looks very nice.
Yeah.
The UI, I must say, it's very slick.
Yeah, definitely. Cyber Shadow just came out this past week. I just got that. I literally played that for like 15 minutes before recording this podcast. But yeah, I've been watching this on Twitter for like years, and I'm super excited about it. I put the first level's pretty awesome. So I just got to like the second level. And then the other big game I've been playing was Hitman 3. The Hitman series got like rebooted in like 2016. If you're not familiar with all this stuff. And this is like the end of the trilogy kind of thing. And it's a great little package. You can basically play all the Hitman 2 and 1 maps inside of Hitman 3. But it concludes the story pretty well. I do think it's got like a different tone than the other games. 1 and 2 were a little more funny, while 3 is a bit more serious. Hey, this is the story. This is where it's going.
I've heard that some people have called it possibly one of the best Hitman games yet. Is that true? Do you think? Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean all 3 I've enjoyed quite a bit. The tech has improved since Hitman 1. With each game, like it's just a little bit slicker. It's a neat blend of scripted and non-scripted gameplay.
Right.
That I think works really well for what that game is. I don't know. It's cool.
I remember as a child playing the original Hitman, and I watched my cousin play it, and then there was a scene.
I never played any of the old ones.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about them, but
there was a scene where someone died. I think it might have been the main character. Oh, no, not the main character. Maybe in a dream, and they just lay down, and then a pool of blood kind of increased from their body, and I think I remember watching that as quite a young child, and I had nightmares ever since. Well, I had nightmares for years afterwards.
Oh gosh.
About being Hitman and bleeding out.
I will say there's a really cool like dream type sequence in the third one.
Oh, right.
That it's really something. It's neat.
Yeah, I think I need to revisit these games, but without the trauma that came with my childhood from witnessing that scene.
Yeah, they're definitely dark games. There's some dark humor in them, but they're fun.
Don't show that to your 6-year-old cousin. I think maybe with the piano wire and
yeah,
it was quite a
for sure.
Yeah, I was quite sheltered as a child. So there's also I want to talk about, I suppose, Among Us as well. Like, I guess in the sense, I think people, they say, oh yeah, Among Us, but it is quite it's a phenomenon that's kind of happened, and it's rose from Newgrounds. It's kind of like a Mafia style game as well, so it's like, I consider it quite a phenomenon that a game, even as visually simple looking as this, has become so popular, and it's got quite a...
Back up for a sec. Did it start on Newgrounds? I didn't actually know about that.
Yeah, it started. I think the creator comes from Newgrounds. They created the Henry Stickmin collection, which is like an adventure game where you play as an infiltrator of various scenarios, and it's sort of, they've got long eyes and sort of stick figure. So that was their kind of creation of that game on Newgrounds, and then the team created Among Us, and that kind of just blew up a little while after release. I think that didn't blow up straight away, but it's such a phenomenon. I honestly, part of me doesn't know why it's so popular, but I also have played it and enjoyed it so much. It's just one of those games where I'm like, man, this it must have just come at just the right time for people to get interested in it and really latch onto it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know if you guys play a lot of board games, but there's like kind of a trend of like card games in the past few years where you basically assume a role and have to find like the imposter among people. There's a few different games that have done this, but it feels like that, but in video game form, and it still has like the same amount of like interaction with people. And Avalon is the one that I've played. Avalon's one. I'm trying to think of the other one, the other big one. I can't think of it right now, but
and it's great to just gamify that in a way that is, honestly, it's very solid. Like, that's one thing I'd say about Among Us. It's very, like, the gameplay design decisions are all, like, the animations are the right length and they're the right sort of satisfying nature, and I think it's just because being tuned very well, the game. That's what I'd say about the game that's kind of underappreciated about it, I think all the elements have been sort of tuned to support multiplayer gameplay very well, I think. So that's what I'd say about it. Yeah, that's the games we've been playing, maybe. Quite a few, but it's a lot. So now that we've finished talking about the games, let's talk about the guests that we have on board. We're going to talk about some topics we must discuss, because this is a podcast, and it's serious. Here's the part of the podcast where we ask the serious questions. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo there. We're going to discuss a few topics about Origins and various things. Our first question is about Origins. How did you start working with RPG Maker, or even just scripting in general? What's your story? I suppose we'll start with... we'll start with Ineluki, maybe? Would you like to start?
Okay, yeah, that's okay. Maybe one could say it's a little bit embarrassing to some how I got to the RPG Maker 2000 because of an anime called Digimon. Yeah, and old stuff. I know.
Old but gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched Digimon as a child. It's very good anime.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a child anymore, so...
sorry.
I was 19. Yeah, 19. And, I had a look at this. It was interesting. I googled something, and I found a game made with the RM95 of a fan of Digimon.
Oh.
It wasn't very good, but it was the first time I made contact with the RPG Maker series. And it was interesting in a way that it's an authoring tool. So you can make a game program without programming. And therefore I researched for some resources for the RM95. And just to have a look how they built the program, to facilitate something like this. And this was when I found the RPG Atelier of GS and SDS,
which is a
which
website,
is still my home. The RPG Atelier.
Oh, yes.
Which is now the Multimedia Access. Back then it was at GamesWeb and some others that we moved up several times with the environment and the likes, or in the forum. Yeah, but and there I discovered the then new RPG Maker 2000. Well, it was the year 2000. And so, some month ago, Don Miguel had made a translation for the ARM2K. And so this was hot news. And yeah, I joined I read in the forums, discovered that there were some people making games with this, or it's starting to do so, like Aurora's Tier, and others. And yeah, then I stayed there and just reading the forum. And in January 2001, I finally asked my first noob question. Is there a way to use MP3s instead of WAV files in the ARM2K?
Yeah. And
no one was able to answer this, or the general accepted answer was no. Well, you know what then happened.
You created a patch that would enable people to input MP3s into 2000.
Yeah. This was a little bit later then, but I answered my own question, yes.
Yeah.
And the answer was yes.
Right. Excellent. And then, and then from there you went to create some other, the other key patch as well, correct?
Yeah, this was then 1 or 2 years later. I'm not exactly sure. Well, it's a long time ago, but I think it's 1 year later then. And yeah.
Excellent. We'll go more into the deep dive into that later, I suppose. But yeah, it was incredibly influential, and I think it's worth exploring in the deep dive section, which will be later on in the podcast.
Yeah.
But and you also mentioned Don Miguel. We actually have a mini-sode with Don Miguel. So if anyone wants to go check that out, that is earlier on in the podcast. Go check out after this one, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Very very important figures in the community. How about, we'll go with Cherry next, actually, since maybe that's a natural transition. How did you start working with RPG Maker?
Well, it also involved RPG Maker 95, but in a very peripheral role. What actually happened was I had been really into, I had come into gaming only recently at that point at all, because as a child, I didn't really play much video games, or to be honest, I also didn't really get that much access to them. There were a few, but they were more like the things that you probably never heard of. But the point is that I was 12, 13, something like that, when I bought magazines about video games, and there were some CDs that came with it, and apart from things like Pokemon, which everybody was playing at the time, and it was the only thing in my mind other than Super Mario World, which was a video game that I really knew. I first played as anything beyond that, Breath of Fire 4. In the PC version, which was on one of those CDs. So it was my first real impression also of an RPG that has like mechanics that are differently from catching Pokemon. And it's still one of the games that have a special place in my heart. I also really enjoy the music and it just shaped certain things in my mind, I guess. But in the next step afterwards, I think I bought the magazine Screen Fun, and that's actually, I think this was the second magazine I bought. The first one was some other one which had the Breath of Fire 4. But when I bought the Screen Fun, it was at the time where they still published some articles about what was going on in the RPG Maker community, and that's as far as I know the way how many other people also found to this community in Germany and Austria. But on this one there were a few games, one of them made with RPG Maker 95, another one made with RPG Maker 2000, which was Legacy of Dream, which in hindsight isn't a very good game, but anyway, it was the first RPG Maker 2000 game that I encountered. And there were some articles about RPG Maker XP, which came out only recently at the time. And I found the concept interesting of a software that allows you to create your own games in an easier way, because I have been programming or dabbling in programming for a long time already at that point. And at that time there was still lots of things that felt for me unachievable, like making games. But then I saw that and it got me interested, and I tried to check out the RPG Maker XP, but it was like a demo version, I believe. But then I actually liked those games more, the 95 and the 2000 game, although the 95 was the first one I played of the two, but then I didn't really like it later on. So I went to the Legacy of Dream of the RPG Maker 2000 game, and I played this from start to finish. And actually, I believe it's using the MP3 patch, if I think about it now. And I was then trying to find out how this was made, and I googled it, and that's how I found the RPG Maker 2000. And I believed back then that it was free, like many people believed, and I started playing with it, and I actually found it for me like more fitting in some way than the RPG Maker XP, and it didn't have the demo limitation.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought it was a legal download as well. I just was like, yep, you can get it for free. It was easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I get the feeling that even the Screen Fun people thought that, but I'm not sure. At least I got this impression. Anyway, at this moment I started playing with the program, and then this was at a similar time when I also got like I realized what the forum is, because I was like trying to find some sort of information, and I found the RPG Maker Quartier, which was rpg2000.de, which unfortunately no longer exists, but it was the first community in first I was reading all the threads that I could find, because I found it interesting, and then I made an account and started answering some stuff as well. And that's how I got started in the community, and I realized that I can actually, with the knowledge that I got from playing around with it, I can actually help others and answer their technical questions. But at some point, this came to a point where I realized that there are also many questions where there isn't really an answer for it as satisfactory answer. How can I do that? Well, you can't really, similar to what Ineluki experienced. And actually, at this point, I had already started being active also at the RPG Atelier community. And the very first program I actually published there was a tool that helped you creating scripts or settings for the key patch, actually. It was called Key Patch Wizard, and nobody really needed it. I think in hindsight, it was pretty polished, and I'm actually pretty proud about it with the skill set that I had back then, that I created the thing and it worked and looked the way it did. But there wasn't really any need for it, to be honest. So I don't think many people even know about it. But the next thing afterwards was, because I read about someone asking about how can I change the font in the game and stuff. So I was then trying to figure out if there is a way, and I thought, okay, it has to know somehow what font to display. So at that point, I I had discovered what the hex editor is, so I was actually able to open something like an exe file without destroying it, which is what happens when you open it in Notepad and change something.
Yeah.
And it's just searched for the font name, and I saw, okay, it says there the font name. What if I change it to another font's name? And it worked. So I had a way to change the font. So I created a small tool around it to make this method accessible to others without involving a hex editor. This was the first tool I published, and from that, it sort of really kicked off the whole patch thing, because there was I shortly afterwards I published another tool called Hyperpatcher in version 1, which did some pretty useless things, like changing the position of the window on the title screen based on a few things that I discovered after I tried to find out how another tool made by Miroku, whose name I forgot what the name of the tool was. Anyway, it had similar options, and I used the tool to compare what it changed and then try to figure out why it can do that. And that's when I first discovered what assembly is and looked into that. And I did a few things on my own. I basically did what this patch did, but a little bit better because it had a few bugs. And then it was still not a very useful tool. But at that moment, a user called Crash Override, I think he goes by the alias WordsBG at another place, came up with basically writing a post. He just came up and said, here is another tool just because I want to own you. I never heard of him before. And it was basically a combination of my font changer and Miroku's other patching tool called Maker Ultimative, which had a few utility options that weren't really that useful in itself. But it had several bugs, and this together with that he commented, because I just wanted to own you, made me want to look deeper into that and create my own tool, which was the Hyperpatcher then, which basically did what he did, but even better. And that's where it started. But the thing that he came up with that made me look deeper into how I can achieve those things and how those things work, and that's how I found some tools that I need to understand.
So saying from a sense of competition and you're trying to one up each other sort of thing. Is that what it was?
Right, and that kicked it off, because this is how I got a few basic skills that allowed me to crush this first layer of like that was required to understand afterwards how a few things work. And then from this on, it was a step-by-step thing, because I was just I saw, okay, how can someone asking a certain question, and I'm thinking about, with the knowledge I have, is there some path that goes there? And then I just went step by step to try and understand how this program works internally. And every time I found something of interest, I tried to understand, okay, how can I use this in some way to make something possible that wasn't before. And that's the path I took on since then, looking for needs and trying to find ways to fulfill them, or finding lemons and trying to find out what lemonade I can make with them, which is also how some of the more obscure patches came to be.
So at the end of it, you had this huge database with memory addresses, data structures, labels, exactly. Variable names. So, and I guess that might have been where you started to think about DynRPG? Yeah,
well, DynRPG happened many years later. So what I said before, how it all started was in 2006, and DynRPG happened in 2012, when there were so many requests coming in about, okay, can you do this sort of patch? Can you do that sort of patch? I opened a thread about patch requests, and then I realized tons of the things would be much easier if I had a way to implement them more through actually developing them, like actually writing normal program code, more in a normal language like C++ or whatever, instead of the tedious procedure I had before that was for everything I want to do or change, first of all, I have to find a place where to input this change, because there is not infinite amount of unused space inside the existing program, and then how to, what gears to turn, sort of, but everything I did was very complicated, because it had to be done in assembly, had to be patched in directly. Doing changes of it was hard and stuff like that. And I realized it would be nice to have a way to interact with it in a more expressive and normal manner. And I realized there should be a way to achieve that if I can sort of just apply the knowledge I have about how things work and bring that into a form where I have some sort of a library or framework or whatever, which contains this knowledge and abstracts away all those intricate details about what memory addresses I need and everything, and instead gives me an interface I can work with. And if I can load external files with my code inside of it into the game, then I also don't have the space issue and things like that. And I can also make the compatibility issue go away of can I combine those patches or do they overwrite each other and stuff like that. If I can have some sort of framework for doing that. And that's how the idea started. And then I realized, okay, that it would be great to get to a point where it's more like RPG Maker XP and later, where you have where you can have an ecosystem of people providing sort of like ready-made solutions for problems that just need to be added and configured by the users. So you can actually have people who have more technical knowledge providing others with less technical knowledge with the ability to implement certain features. Similar what happens with the scripts in GSS, as I mentioned. So, and of course, this would have the great benefit that I am not the only person, almost only person, at least at the time, which was like, because the thing was, okay, you need something, you have to ask Cherry, because otherwise there is nobody else who is going to make it possible anyway. So it will end up on Cherry's desks, and the desk and had, and by the way still have a huge backlog. And the end result was, unfortunately, that because I could imagine solutions to tons of things, that I said, okay, yes, I'm going to do something, probably soon, later, whatever, I have an idea, and never really got around to doing it, and sort of like put people off for years at the end about something that I told them I would do. And so that's how DynRPG came to be, and I'm very happy that it achieved its goal and even surpassed it, because even with DynRPG at some point I was no longer able to maintain it in the way that I thought I could, because I still had tons of ideas. And then great other people took it on, first by developing plugins that enabled those things, and then like PepsiOtaku did, actually extending DynRPG itself to allow others to create even better plugins.
That's really great. That's like I know of a lot of people who are very thankful for all your work that you've done for the engine. Several people were asking, get Cherry on the podcast, get Cherry on the podcast. That's part of the reason why I had a bonus pack. I'm like, oh yes, I can't believe I didn't think about that. That was an excellent sort of way to get the community involved in helping you out, because it can't all be on your shoulders to create all these extensions for the engine. That's a great segue, actually, talking about the DynRPG community. I'd like to ask PepsiOtaku, you were quite involved in DynRPG a bit later on, but you probably encountered RPG Maker a little bit earlier. How did you come upon using RPG Maker as an engine?
Yeah, so I'll try to go through some of this quick. But I basically started with RPG Maker 95. I was in high school at the time. This was the Don Miguel translation of it. I remember like the big inspirational game for me was like RPG Maker 95 game was Crestfallen. And I was like, whoa, cool. This is like this cool fantasy game. And I don't know, like I don't think I even played the whole thing, but it had like this great, it had this great intro, and it played like music from Chrono Trigger. So it had the Shala's theme from Chrono Trigger playing. I had never heard this before. I had never played Chrono Trigger, and I was like, what is this? This great music. I'm associating it with Crestfallen, even though it's clearly like ripped off like a SNES game, of course. And then I ended up playing Chrono Trigger after that, and then it just blew me away. And then I wanted to make RPGs for the longest time. And then I got into RPG Maker 2000 when that came out, when that got translated. Again, that was Don Miguel through his like little website there. And I made like a I alluded to earlier, Everlasting Journey started in RPG Maker 95. It was literally like this 15-minute demo of, you're walking into a village, you walk into a bar or something, and then it gets attacked by demons and it just burns the town. It's really dumb. It literally, the only thing it has in common with like Everlasting Journey now is the name Sparrow, the character named Sparrow. I honestly think it predated Pirates of the Caribbean by a couple of years. But anyway, so when on to 2000, that was when the first like real version of Everlasting Journey was started. There's a couple like similar maps that are still kind of carried over to this day. They've been updated a lot, but yeah, the first couple areas of the game kind of thing. And then yeah, so I basically started working on Everlasting Journey from like, I don't know, around 2005, 2006-ish. When 2003 came out, I kind of just started working on it more seriously and got into game development type stuff more seriously. I never really went into the programming side of it. This was still like when I was focused on design, I was actually going to school for like graphic design and web design, web development. Well, some minor web development type stuff. It was like Flash era. And so I didn't actually get into programming until DynRPG came out. That was when I started learning C++, and I learned C++ so that I could do all these things in RPG Maker 2003 that I knew were possible somehow, but I had no means of doing them. And so it was like opening the floodgates for me creatively.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I have this list of things that I want to like add to like RPG Maker games. And those were kind of the basis for those plugins. It was like, okay, anything that kind of ranged from like, minor tweaks to UI, showing the time and the menu, and things that like I've always like thought belonged in an RPG that RPG Maker didn't have, and that grew into adding like Xbox controller support and that OpenGL plugin. That was like the last big plugin that I put out before I moved on to bigger and better things, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the overview for me.
Your plugin is also used in Theia, by the way.
What was that? Oh yeah, in Theia. Yep.
Your plugin is also being used there. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a version of Theia on my hard drive. I haven't played it yet though.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I got started programming, making DynRPG plugins. So, like, what was always hard for me was that, like, by creating these plugins, like, I suddenly had to be the maintainer of these plugins. And like that, when like creatively, I just wanted to bounce around and like go to the next thing and just move on. Like memory leaks be damned. I wanted to write new code and try.
But they won't let you go. They'll keep reporting bugs and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So like that was a big wake up call. Like, oh no, this is what it means to be a developer.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. So I basically did what I could for, a number of years till like 2016 or so. And, then I kind of moved on to just writing game engines because I wanted to refocus my attention on, writing C++ and really, really diving deep and like learning everything there is to know. And, I've continued that journey till today, really. So it's, it's been good.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, you went about the whole journey of creating the plugins for the PepsiOtaku plugin emporium, and and then also the just like your personal development of Everlasting Journey and stuff like that. So I suppose you've had both sides of the coin, and then going on to create another game in C++.
Yeah, so I mean, like Everlasting Journey was a very long project, obviously, that I really, really wanted to finish, and I don't want to make any promises right now, but I really, really wanted to finish it, but like I just had too much ambition for it. It's overscoped, that sort of thing, and so that's something you learn as a game developer. Is like is this too much? And like at some point it's like I needed to cut things. I needed to just cut things, but I almost couldn't because like there were just these weird, it would be more work to just cut things out than, I don't know, it would probably be the same amount of work to cut things out than it would be to like finish it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. Just because there was just a lot, the way the world was crafted was like really short-sighted. It was like, I was like, okay, I'm going to have 2 parts. I'm going to cut the world in half, where you play the top half of the world through half the game, and then you play the other half of the world, the other half of the game. But the problem was that like I also wanted like side quests and like I wanted more content. And so I was like, okay, well, here's like the main plot in the top half of the world. But I want to add like these little side quests in here. But also, like when you get to the bottom half of the world, you don't go back to the top half of the world yet. Like there's like kind of it locks you into a big story part. And like, I couldn't, I don't know, that broke me basically. there was just, like I screwed up in that sense. It was, like I want to put out, I kind of want to put out what I have at some point. I just haven't felt, I don't know. I basically have to revisit a lot of stuff.
It might require a little bit of work before you can release something that represents what you want to release for that particular demo. Yeah,
exactly. The other issue is like, the music for that game was basically pulled from like, these MIDI sites. And like these days I think about like licensing and stuff like that. Like I don't want to just like rip off people and say, people put work into like music and like art assets and stuff like that. I want something that's mine when I get it out there. So like by using other people's like music and stuff like that, it's like, I'd have to like reach out to these people, find these old websites that may or may not exist anymore, or like just add new music at some point. And so it's daunting, right? It's for a game that's already taken so long, that I've already put so much like work into. It's daunting to get it out into the world because there's all these asterisks basically,
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's a really good introduction to each of our guests from themselves. Now I think we're going to move on from that section to talk about our next section, which is the question box. Welcome to the question box. This is the segment where RPG Maker community users ask questions related to game dev and design that we probably don't know the answers to, but we'll try. We're going to start off with like a few compliments from different users. Giznads from twitter.com says, "Yo, can I get all you guys to come back and make some more plugins for my game?" Also, not a question. Just want to thank you guys for all the hard work you've done. You have all breathed new life into my once dead project. Wouldn't be moving forth without any of you. And then RV Ashley from twitter.com says, "Echo this 1000%. Without these folks, I wouldn't have picked up RM2K3 again."
Well, I'm flattered.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that my work has this sort of impact. I guess you feel the same.
Mm.
Yeah. I wouldn't touch RM2K3, but
yeah, I mean,
but your work helped pave the way for some of the later plugins that were to come, I guess.
I mean, I would say that like all the tools are there for you to write plugins yourself, right? So if you have an idea for a plugin, like go for it. Like learn C++. Honestly, it's if you really,
I know it.
Like if you like, it may be scary and daunting, but I mean, it's literally how I started with writing plugins.
I learned.
So
I think I learned C++ 3 times all over, and this third time was about 2004. So it's my favorite language. So
yeah.
Actually, I learned C++ C++ also for DynRPG. When I built it, I was thinking, okay, how can I do this? How can I make this accessible to an audience? Apparently C++ is the thing everybody knows, well, more or less. And my main language that I've been using all the time, back then at least, was FreeBasic, which is actually like a modern version of what was Basic. It's started as a QBasic compatible thing and evolved into its own thing, which it can now compile for multiple platforms and has compatibility with C libraries and stuff. So that's what I've been using for all the tools and stuff back then. But I had to learn C++ and also some details about it, of course, to some low-level details that others didn't need to build DynRPG.
The only thing I would come back for is providing some additional tool to make building easier. So like one of the biggest problems with DynRPG was like, they download like some version of code blocks, but they get like a wrong compiler version or like some wrong DynRPG version or something.
Right,
like
I see.
Some mismatch of the library that you build against. So
yeah, because unfortunately DynRPG is very intricate about that.
Yeah,
like it has to fit together because it's doing some weird magic stuff in a way to make it all work, and some inline assembly, and then you have incompatibilities with issues with it's a bit more complicated than other things.
Oh yeah. So improving the tooling would be nice, but it's still. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've kind of moved on.
Right. Also, I realized it's still the last version that I officially released was 0.14, but then I did an 0.20 beta, which never officially went out of beta, and I released it only in some channels. It's not the version you get on the homepage. And then you came and created 0.30 and 32 and whatever, and now it's a bit of a confusion what you can get where and what's the latest version. I have planned to clean that up. Actually, I've been thinking about maybe making the whole thing more open source than it is in a way, because now some people got the library source, and the reason I didn't do that yet was just because I know it's quite some work to make it accessible, like to make the source useful to anybody, because of all the patching stuff, and because like the load.dll is written in FreeBasic and uses special headers and stuff. But maybe I'll get around to doing that. What I'm definitely going to do is clean up this version mess. I'm going to put up the 0.20 on the website.
Yeah.
And link to yours.
I mean, I can just take mine down and then we can just make yours like the new one.
No, I'm not sure. Actually, you know what? Maybe we should just merge it properly and put it on some GitHub and then do some stuff. I mean, but we will talk about this another time. But I do intend to clean this up a bit.
I think that is it's actually quite interesting for listeners to hear about the whole integration process. But it's very it's a great plan to have. It sounds like a great plan. Hey there, it's Benny from the Editing Bay. Just a little comment. Cherry has asked to include that, by the way, there's been news since we recorded the podcast. DynRPG is now open source on GitHub, and two cool folks named Mandajan and Root have started tinkering with it in an attempt to port it to the official RM2K3 version. That's the RPG Maker 2003 version. Just thought I'd add that in there. Back to the podcast.
You mentioned your font changer, that you just opened it in the hex editor and changed the font name. Wasn't it a null-terminated string or something, so that you have to make space for the font name? Or was it just 8.3?
No, because actually Don Miguel already made space for it, but he actually padded it with spaces because he also didn't know how to change it properly. So what happened, I think the original name were MS Mincho and MS Gothic, which was not changed in the 2K3, but I think Don Miguel changed it to the RM 2000 and RMG 2000, because what's actually in there is a longer string, which was he didn't realize that how it needs to be changed. It was padded with spaces. And this was very easy for me then to update. and only later on I realized that the 4 bytes before it are the length of the string because it's a Delphi string, so it's not just null terminated. That's for compatibility. There's also the actual length before it, and then even before it is the reference counter, which is -1 for static strings. But this is this is that.
Gould from the RPG Maker Cola Discord asks, ask them the most important question. Where can I find some cherry Pepsi? My town is all out.
I know this old brick and mortar store called Amazon that you could definitely buy it from.
I think you can find it from Ineluki's shop.
Whether or not they ship it to your area is another story, of course. But.
Right.
Yeah. Schweep or Darkin from Twitter.com says, remember kids, say no to row.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, the row command they're talking about. So basically, remove the row command using a DynRPG plugin.
Actually, it's not a DynRPG plugin.
Yeah.
Although in version Open 20 and onwards, I have this thing called quick patches, which not only allows you to do some small patches in the INI file, but also just drop in IPS files into the Dyn patches folder, so you can't mess anything up by patching, and you can just remove the file again. So I think there is a no row patch as an IPS patch around, so you can just drop it in that folder, so you can sort of like use it with DynRPG in a way. But originally it had nothing to do with DynRPG. It's just about removing this row command. I think the whole reason it's fixed is maybe for the same reason that I think also why the end command is fixed in the main menu. It's because, in my opinion, it was the easiest way to not having to handle the case where you might have no commands at all, which the engine doesn't really support in Windows, to have 0 selection options. That causes a mess. And I think that this is probably the reason.
Interesting.
I've never understood the row hate. I mean, I get it. There's like this subtle difference in some formula, or various formulas rather.
And it's also a little bit buggy sometimes, but right.
So I think I added like some mechanic with the row in Everlasting Journey that I think it's like some boss you fought. I don't remember.
There is one problem,
but yeah,
there is one problem with it, that you can't really control it from events, that you also can't really check what your current row is, and that it moves your characters around, which means you can't be sure anymore where the characters are on the battle screen, because the player may have changed their row, and then you can't do anything custom about backgrounds or animations or stuff which takes assumptions about where characters are.
Yeah, that was a challenge. I always had to design my backgrounds with the row in mind, so that like a character didn't step back into like the ceiling or something. if I had like some, I don't know. It depended on the battle screen I was doing, but I basically like mapped out the battle screens, and then I would screen cap it, and then I would just use that as like I would basically create a ping and then import the ping as the battle background.
Yeah. So say no to row. Superstroke from the RPG Maker Discord. I'll say that again. Superstroke from the RPG Maker Cola Discord asks, for all three, any interesting or fun discoveries while patching 2K or 2K3?
Yes.
Yeah. There have been always surprises. Actually, this time I've been waiting. Maybe let's do that again. Maybe someone else wants to start this time.
Okay. I guess I have some little things which are not directly 2K, 2K3, but which I discovered while patching 2K. I am a big fan of the Windows MCI interface, the media control interface. I think it's deprecated since 98 or something like so, but I guess some parts of it are still working. I hope so. Maybe Cherry can comment on that.
Not sure.
Are my patches still working on the newer Windows versions?
Yes, but I don't think any game at all ever used the send MCI command. But the patch itself, I think, should be working.
Yeah, the MP3 patch is using the MCI interface.
Oh, right. This is what you mean. I think it's still working.
Yeah, so there's a neat, this neat interface, the MCI interface. We just have a very small API. It's essentially, I think, 2 functions or so, where you just send plain text messages to Windows, like a comment and some parameters and options after that. And with this, you can open a file, you can play back, you can get the position of the sound you're just playing and the likes. And it was really neat and very easy to use. Or you could open your CD rack and the likes. And I'm really not sure why it wasn't used in a wider basis for playing sound and the likes. It was really easy. And another interesting thing was using my MP3 patch. I was able to circumvent some game protection mechanisms back in the RPG Maker 2000. There was some infamous patch or something, or crypter for games, so that you were not allowed to open them in the editor. And because there were no files there, and everything was packed into an executable.
Molebox.
And then, yes, exactly, Molebox.
I created an unpacker for that sometime later on.
Yeah, I did too. For myself, more or less. Because so the Molebox just had this executable and made some hidden disks, temporary RAM disk or something like that, and extracted everything there so that you can't access the files, and then everything was run from there. And yeah, a very easy solution for this was to put my Harmony DLL and the old Harmony DLL to the executable. And then this one would be loaded instead of the original one. And then, of course, the program is running in the same frame as the encrypted one, and then it was easy to write a function that just copies the files to somewhere else.
Because Molebox is patching the loader which loads your DLL, and any DLL that's getting loaded also gets those file system calls patched to be redirected to the in-memory data, so you have full access. That's more or less the same thing I did, but my way I just had to find a way to also load the DLL in the first place that is normally not loaded, and get those things patched. But then apart from that, it was basically the same thing. I then had a DLL which just accessed everything and copied it some other place.
Yeah, and I also made a copy protection for games with my patch, which could be used.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. You were still able to open the game in the editor and have a look at all the files and the likes, but you were not allowed to change any map. And this was relatively easy. Because I made some kind of checksum of the maps files and put it at the end of the map file itself, which was then not read by the editor.
I see.
And when it was changed, this checksum wasn't there. And so when starting the game, it just said, made a message box that the game was changed, and everyone was confused.
I also had some actually fun discoveries about the maker itself. I mean, it was a journey, a fun journey from the start, because I always discovered something new that was interesting and a bit unexpected. But one thing that I mean, also, I think I really got to understand the way how the great mind of Yoji Ojima worked, or still works, who designed, as you know, not only the RPG Maker 2000, but also the XP, VX, and I don't know, even the latest one. I'm not sure about that. But the thing is, I think I developed a good understanding of his way of thinking and his way of designing things, and the reason for certain decisions, and I tried to keep the spirit in the updates I did in the official version for RPG Maker 2000 and 2003. And I also realized as part of this how, I mean, I sort of like, I got a picture of how it must have happened that the RPG Maker 2003 was made. Because it was not made by Yoji Ojima. I mean, it was using his source code for RPG Maker 2000 and extending it. As far as I know, it was made by Shinji Hamada, but I'm not sure about that entirely. For me, it feels like this. The RPG Maker 2000 was a great success. At that point, I think it was already belonging to Enterbrain after the value version, and they wanted to make a new version of it, which is improved based on what I think is feedback from the community, because that's the only way I could imagine how certain of the weird features came to be, because it sounds to me like they asked, or maybe they looked around what people were asking in forums and stuff, and then made a list of improvements. And it looks to me as if this was given to another developer, and they got this list and they got this code and they got like a time frame and all budget to implement as much as they can in this time. And the result kind of shows that, because everything that was changed in the RPG Maker 2003 has sort of a very different feel to it. You see that some of the original decisions were not really understood and not really implemented in the same way onwards. For example, the IDs of event commands. Yoji Ojima had a great scheme that he's using, for example, 10,000 something for normal event commands, 20,000 something for event commands that are part of another command, for example, the second, third, and fourth line of a message, while the first line is at under 10,000. And then inside of these, it's grouped in hundreds for specific categories, and then in tens, and then certain subcommands are there, and stuff like that, which is amazing in my opinion. But then those new commands that were added on the fourth event page in RPG Maker 2003, they are, I believe, 1,000 and 1,000 and 2,003. So they're like totally outside of the normal scheme of things. And you can see this in many other places. And also some of the features, as I mentioned, feel to me like something is lost in the communication. Like there is this feature of having the bottom half of a picture in the other transparency, which has no use at all, because what it does, it basically cuts it in half. And then you have one transparency value for the top half and one for the bottom, which makes no sense whatsoever. You just use two pictures. Maybe someone was asking about having a gradient in it, and it wasn't really understood properly. Also, it's implemented in a very, very inefficient way, which none of the other things would have been implemented this way. So there is, and this is just an example, there's also some features which clearly have been started and then quickly, when the time or money or something ran out, have been left in this state, and just like that, you can't really see that they are half done. Like there is a larger char set, there is a char set 2, but it's just like there is an if false around everywhere where it's used in a way. It's not really usable.
Really? Oh, wow.
But I'm guilty of the same thing, because in the last version of RPG Maker 2003, if you can find it, there is a dialogue that warns you about advanced features and a button for it in system, which does nothing at the moment, so it's just hidden. Because I also wanted to bring this version out in the for the 10th anniversary, or 15th, sorry, for the 15th anniversary of RPG Maker 2000. And I didn't have time to implement it. There was supposed to be options, like advanced options, that replace what some patches would be doing. But this is something funny I found in there. And the other thing is, we knew before already that his probably Yoji Ojima's nickname was Lucifer. You can see this from several places in the file. And this was when it made click that this was related, when I then realized that there was this weird value that was being set to 666, but I didn't realize at the start it was 666 because I looked at it in hexadecimal, and it's just used as a flag for a certain thing. It's actually if part of the code is loaded in the editor or in the engine that it behaves differently, and it's set to either 0 or 666. So that's, now I realized afterwards it's obviously a reference to his nickname Lucifer. And suddenly it made sense at that point. Yeah, that was pretty funny too.
Yeah, excellent. There's a lot of interesting kind of tidbits when patching 2K and 2K3. Superstroke also asks, what were your methodologies to go from, I suppose, this is a black box I don't understand yet, to, hey, here's a new feature, I suppose, from front to back?
That's a very, very long process, because I guess what he's talking, or what they are talking about is basically from the very start, that what I described about, okay, I just found out how to change the font, how I came to this point now where it's like okay, so we need a sprite sheet feature patched into RPG Maker 2003 because we are going to release it in the next official version, although that was actually entirely my idea. That wasn't the requirement, but to achieve something like that, and it's not something you can say in a sentence or two, because it's like the result of many, many years of work and interest in it, and it's really just baby steps. I mean, it started with trying to understand. Like you have a certain point, I mean, you find through some way, I mean, it's too complicated to explain now, that a certain part of the code does a certain thing. And then from that, you go step by step and trying to make sense of things you find and how they fit into the big picture. So you have, let's say, you identified a certain function that draws a text, let's say. And sorry. You identified a certain function that draws a text, let's say. And then from there, you realize, okay, this function is called here with this text. So probably this part has something to do with drawing the menu, let's say. This function that draws the menu calls another function that does something else. Let's see what happens. At which point is it called? Okay, it's called when you push enter. And if I remove this call, it doesn't make the decision sound anymore. So obviously this is the function that plays decision sounds. And then you have a similar function that's next to that one, and so it's probably another sound function, and then you realize, okay, it's the escape sound function, and then inside that you find a function that passes a string that contains the name of the sound effect. So then you figure out the second argument is sound. So that's obviously the function that combines the name of the folder and the file to find the right file and see if it's which file type it is, and so on. So it's like an exploration process, and it builds your knowledge, and it builds basically a database of all those pieces of information. And the more this understanding grows about, okay, if I wanna change this, I have to look at these and these places, and probably have to change this and that, or something related to that, so I know what I don't know. That's the important part. I always know the next step, and to get to that is just really a matter of time and like digging into it deeper and deeper, and developing solutions for the problems you find while doing something, and building your own ecosystem of solutions, which is how DynRPG was created, and which is how some of the solutions came to be that I used to do those pretty advanced patches that basically turned RPG Maker 2003 version 1.09a in Japanese to what you now have as a much extended English version, which is in reality a huge patch. It's because for RPG Maker 2000, I actually got the source code and was able to edit it, but they lost somehow the source code for 2003, which probably is for the same reason that it was not done by sort of like the core developer who did everything else. And so this one had to be done by patching. And ironically, the 2003 version got many more updates and improvements than the 2000, because not only it was more popular and was going to be released first, but also because I was able to apply actually some knowledge better than I was able to do it on the source code of it. Because I could use the patching knowledge to do some stuff, and actually could do things in certain ways that are not so easy to do when you work on the original source code. which is actually funny because normally it's the other way around. Without the source, you can't do hardly anything, and with the source, you can do everything. And here, it turned out to be the other way around for me, at least. It was easier to patch stuff on the 2K3.
Yeah. I just want to add a very short summary to what Cherry said. Don't be afraid to poke around, and don't be afraid to learn something new.
Yeah, I'll just add
Yeah.
I'll just add, like, from a plugin development standpoint, the black box for me was, what is a game engine? And learning, basically by reading through what Cherry had for the DynRPG source code and the header files, you basically got kind of an outline of, what it takes to make a game engine. And so from there, it's just, it's a lot of poking and prodding, figuring out things and seeing what works and what doesn't.
What Ineluki said about don't be afraid of poking around, that, by the way, is still true for RPG Maker 2003. Don't be afraid of poking around there. Also, maybe if you're interested in doing the same thing, learning about reverse engineering or patching or stuff, find a tutorial. I still believe there is a tutorial from a user called Lena151, which is a very, very old thing that teaches you reverse engineering, but I think it's still a very good learning resource even today, even though the examples are outdated. And you can try, I mean, if you're interested in that, you can try poking around in RPG Maker 2003 like I did, because there is luckily now a patch EULA which basically allows you to patch RPG Maker 2003 or use patches under certain conditions. For the exact details, you can find the official thread on rpgmakerweb.com that has this document. But basically, patching is okay and officially allowed on 2K3, which is great. So you can also poke around yourself.
Yeah, so that's kind of how the process can work. It just sort of like crafting from nothing, but then sort of making your way through like that. Blind from the RPG Maker Cola Discord has a few questions for specific users, but like guests here. But I think if you have something to add, you can of course add it in. Our first question is for Cherry. Knowing there's certainly a huge demand for it, would you ever consider returning to add more functionality to RPG Maker 2003? Why or why not?
Well, there's a few things to say to that. First of all, some people already know I'm notorious for saying I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, and I never do it, which is because I just have tons of ideas of things that if I see a way to achieve something and I feel like others are not following this path because they don't know it or they can't or whatever, I feel inclined to say I'm going to do it because I feel it's wasted if I wouldn't. On the other hand, I always overestimate my own not only time, but also motivation eventually to follow through with these things. And I've been saying for a long time, I'm going to do more updates for it. And I haven't done this since version 1.12. 1.12a is just a bug fix. But it's still something that is like on my heart even. I would love to do it. I have tons of ideas. I just, more realistically, I guess it's not going to happen. But what can happen is a few patches here and there, like what happened recently. When people ask me something, I find a way to implement it. I do it. The other reason why it's not that likely, although never say never, but just saying it's less likely to happen as an official update, is because of this official part of it. Because even the last update, the 1.12, was with all the nice picture stuff and everything, was because I felt inclined to do it and I didn't get paid for that one, like I did for the original translation. And even that was sort of like, it wasn't sure at the start if they are even interested in relaunching a new version or willing to do it, because they would rather like to push new versions of RPG Maker and things like that. So the more time went by, the less likely it got that I would receive support from Enterbrain or Degika or Kadokawa in that respect. And then, of course, I could still release it as patch, but I also know that, especially in the part with official RPG Maker being out there, that there is still a large part of the community, as far as I understand, who doesn't really like the idea of patches, even with the patch EULA. I also got this feedback from people who have been active on the RPG Maker Reddit, that there are people who just like are not comfortable with the idea. And also there is this great patch already out there, the Maniac patch by Bingshan24, I believe, who is a Japanese developer, and it does tons of nice things that are exactly in my spirit, actually, and I'm so happy to see what this person achieved with this patch. And I'm also sort of a little bit afraid of launching a big patch like that, which would probably be incompatible with the Maniac patch in a way. I'm more hoping. I mean, I'm looking at this Maniac patch as like the next real version of RPG Maker 2003 in a certain way, because it really achieves many of those things that I have thought of doing, and it does it in a great way, and it also follows the spirit, as I said, what I try to do. It follows in many ways how it's done, the spirit of Yoji Ojima, and I'm very happy about seeing this patch.
The next question is, which projects have most inspired you since joining the community? And this is for anyone who wants to answer it.
Let's see. I don't know. So I don't know. There's been a number of projects over the years. So I'm gonna go by like ones that I've kept on my hard drive, ones that I've played. Like I wish I had played more RPG Maker games than I have, but basically, like, there was this old one called Light Prism, which I really enjoyed. I played on a stream, I think, a couple times over the years. And I forget what community that came out of. I want to say... I'm not sure. It's a really neat game. It's about, like, mages and stuff like that. This weird little mage story. It's a couple hours long. Stuff like... Oh gosh, these are like some deep cuts. Legend of the Philosopher's Stone.
Oh yeah.
Ball Mug Cycle.
Yes.
Let's see. I don't know. The Alex games were always kind of cool. I like those little community projects. And I don't know. Yeah, just random stuff.
Yeah, those are quite formative games right there. Yeah, I played all of those games actually. When I was a little bit, maybe about, what's that, like 10 years ago maybe? I'm not too sure when they were released, but it must be quite old by now.
And I'm always interested in like weird little tech demos too, like, or things that like use RPG Maker in unexpected ways. Somebody made like a like Zelda engine, I think, in RPG Maker years ago.
Right,
that was wild. Yeah, it was a really short demo. It was like a tech demo, but like it was wild. It was cool. This was before like DynRPG, I think. And yeah, I mean, I mentioned like Grimps earlier. That was just a neat little puzzle game that I just really loved, and Momeka just did its absolute astonishing job making gameplay work in RPG Maker that, you know, was not part of like the core RPG Maker tooling. Basically like writes his own gameplay and stuff with it.
Yeah, well, a lot of the games which inspired me, I already mentioned, but there are several others, of course. Like Sternchen Saga, Dreamland, Three Monkeys. And there are so many, which I can't mention all of them right now. I think the RPG Maker itself is also very inspiring. On the one side, it's a great way to get into how computers work in general, even on a very low level. I think you do not learn too much of good programming practices with the RPG Maker right now. At least not for high-level languages, but the RPG Maker, at least the 2001 and the 2003, I guess, too, show that are very, very hard, are very close to the core of assembly, in fact. one could say it's a very specialized assembly dialect in which you're coding, and so it's a very good start for going into low-level programming, and this is awesome. You learn to manage memory. You learn to have basic control structures and the likes, and build this up from block to block. The only thing I missed in this regard was freeform commands to write the scripting itself without the clicky bunty interfaces of buttons and commands or so. But on the other side, well, it should be easy to use for beginners. So what's helping on one side is a hindrance later on, but well, that's a trade-off you have to do. So yeah, I'm thankful for the system. It might not be the most powerful engine out there, but it is definitely an interesting thing. Especially because it's so limited, and limitation breeds creativity. And so a lot of great stuff has come from that.
Gary from the RPGmaker.net Discord asks, is there no way you're putting your hands on RPG Maker 2003 again, though you still provide support for DynRPG users? Well, joke aside, do you have other planned projects for RPG Maker? I'm not sure how successful that joke was, but
well, let me address the joke first. It's not. It's true that you haven't heard from me about RPG Maker 2003 updates for a long time, and that's also the reason for that I explained before. But on the other hand, I don't think I gave more or less support to the official version of RPG Maker 2003 compared to DynRPG users. I think I'm just sometimes dropping in somewhere and providing some support or doing some patch or not. But in general, I don't really have other planned projects. In general, I don't really have other planned projects for RPG Maker at the moment. It's probably going to continue like it is now. That there may be some random there may be some random contributions from me when I feel like it. And the only thing that I thought about doing, maybe, but that's another maybe, is picking up the development of Unidebug again, just because I saw it recently and I remembered it, and I thought it's actually really cool, and it's a shame it didn't continue from there. And probably you never heard about it because it's in an early stage, but it already works quite well. It's a debugging utility that runs in the background on your computer and just attaches itself to every RPG Maker 2000 or 2003 game that it can. And it allows you to not only save at any point and this sort of thing, but also to open a console where you can from there change some settings, see what map you're on, teleport yourself to some places, change switches of variables, search for them by name, do stuff like that, speed up the whole game or slow it down, or show a HUD where you see all the events and what IDs they have on the map, stuff like that, which I thought would come in really handy. But it was one of the things that I started because I had this idea and I wanted to see where it goes. And then after the first or second version, I lost interest because I just realized how many other things I could do, but part of them are hard. And then there was another thing I wanted to do instead. But I think it has potential, and maybe I will pick up that one, or at least get one more version out of it, which does a few more nice things. But that's the only thing, really.
Yeah, for me, it's more or less the same. I consider myself like a grandpa for the community. I'm retired, but not dead.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same on my end. I would love to go back to RPG Maker one day, but it's tough. I moved on. I'm also writing a game engine right now that is very far along. And it's probably going to be my engine that I'll be using for projects going forward, kind of thing. Not just the racing game I'm working on, but some of the thing in the future. If I go back to RPG Maker, it'll be RPGs. I'm just gonna make an RPG and with this engine.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I see what you're saying.
Lord Blue Rouge from the RPG Maker Cola Discord asks, for Pepsi, can we expect a new release of Everlasting Journey sometime in the future with all the really cool DynRPG plugins?
Yeah, I would love to. Okay, so context: Lord Blue Rouge did the original beta test for Everlasting Journey back in like 2009 or maybe earlier, like 2008 or something. And so yeah, a little bit of history behind that question, but yeah, probably at some point. Like I said, I gotta tidy it up. I gotta figure out all those asterisks that I talked about before, like with licensing, figuring out like what to do about the music, seeing if there's any like ripped graphics that I want to remove or something. Like it would be a lot of work just to get that stuff
there's a
done.
lot to go. And for Cherry, knowing how current operating systems work with RPG Maker 2003, what does the future of RPG Maker 2003 look like in terms of legacy and compatibility issues? Will we still be playing RPG Maker 2003 games well into the future? And I suppose other guests can chime in on this one.
As far as I know, the current operating systems work reasonably well with RPG Maker 2003, although I do hear from time to time that there's still some issues, like lags and stuff like that. Even though I tried to get rid of the biggest issue, that was the way the graphics are rendered in the official 2K3 version, that at least works a lot better now. Especially the full screen mode was basically unusable with today's computers, which should work great now. But I know that it's still basically the same software in its core that it was in 2000 or 2002, depending which RPG Maker we're talking about. And there are certain things that probably won't age well and will become more problematic in the future. I'm not sure about it. I hope it will last for a long time more, but I don't really know. However, I have high hopes in projects like Easy RPG, which aim to provide modern open source replacement for the game engine itself that runs the games, and it already works exceptionally well for RPG Maker 2000 games. There are still a few things that are not implemented for 2K3, especially in the battle system. But overall, it's already a great option to play games on other operating systems or even other platforms like your phone or even some game consoles. And I think in a certain way this has to be the future, because it's just not really feasible to adapt RPG Maker 2003, especially without the source code, to future updates in requirements from new operating systems and such. The only downsides to this is, of course, that it also means that changes like the Maniacs patch that are being done to the RPG Maker 2003 engine now also mean a lot of additional work to Easy RPG to support it. And there is, of course, the issue that it can't just support any patch. It has to have, I mean, it's a lot of work for them to support specific patches. So unfortunately, something like DynRPG is never going to be supported by Easy RPG just because it's a technical impossibility. The plugins that you write are compiled codes. They are compiled for a specific platform, for this specific engine. They talk to specific memory regions and stuff like that. It's not possible to port them. The only thing that you can do is take a specific plugin that many people use and implement its functionality inside Easy RPG. And I think that's being considered and being done, but only for a few important things. So that's the issue I see there.
I might chime in here and ask a question for Cherry. You said it will be impossible, but on the other hand, well, you could implement a VM and then let the DynRPG plugins run there. and emulate what they are doing on the other side. So with enough,
not really. Then you just have a VM. Then you just have an x86 VM with half of Windows around it, because otherwise the main engine wouldn't work properly. So this is the problem there. I mean, it's not really something Easy RPG could do.
Yeah. So Easy RPG is what it's based on. Is C++, it's Java, or what
it's
is it?
It's C++. As far, yeah. It's C++, and
yeah,
it basically
okay.
re-implemented the whole engine.
Yeah, it's a completely different executable.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
It's like a completely different executable, right? It's not even RPG-RT.exe.
Right, it's not RPG-RT.exe.
Yeah.
It's like a re-implementation similar to what Wine is. So that you can run Windows programs on Linux. It's a re-implementation of the engine from scratch that works. I mean, that aims to basically work the same from the perspective of the game being run, but it's still an entirely different beast. And since all the plugins and patches work on a lower level than the game content itself, and make the assumption that there is an RPG-RT.exe, that there is the original executable from the RPG Maker engine, that's why I said it's impossible to do that, because the only way would be, like Ineluki said, virtual machine. But then it's not a new. But then it's the same thing as you had before, just in a virtual machine. Then it's not a new engine, and it comes with the same problems the old engine had, and lots of performance overhead.
Take virtual machine as emulator, and so you can run an x86 emulator on. Or in software, in principle, but I know it would be an insane amount of work, and it would benefit none, more or less. But it is possible.
I mean, the problem isn't even running the plugin. The problem is the interaction between the plugin and the game. You couldn't replicate. Basically, you would have to replicate the whole code, and then still it wouldn't really work. Because the new engine that you're running isn't the code that isn't. Okay, I don't know how to make this sentence. Let's leave it out. Also, it's going to be very technical. If I want to explain this for the real reason, it's pretty hard. But let's say this.
It's insane.
It's insane. You would, among other things, you would have to basically replicate an interface that to the plugin that looks like the original engine with all its data structures and everything, even though the new engine has its own data structures and works internally in a different way. And that just that part alone, I'm not even talking about hooking functions and stuff like that yet, is borderline impossible, and at least not feasible. And I mean, maybe it would be in 100 years, I don't know, where we could ask some AI to build this system to run on our 8 petahertz computer, whatever. So then probably it wouldn't really matter, but I don't think it's feasible now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is it's always better to work from source code. And that's what Easy RPG is. You know, it's a new source code for it.
Yeah, so you said that the RPG Maker 2003 source code is lost. Could you fork it from the 2000?
That also would be a huge task that I don't think anybody would want to pay me for, so that's why it's never going to happen. But it could probably, I mean, in theory, it could be done, that's true, but it would be like half of the work that Easy RPG had to do and is still doing, only about the 2K3 parts in particular, because of all those differences, of course, between the 2K and the 2K3. I mean, even the whole side view battle thing is enough work. I mean, it would be easier, of course, to fork the 2K and build our own 2K21 that has our own implementation of a side view battle system. That would be a lot easier. But making a source code version of it that is equivalent in its functionality and its bugs, by the way, because otherwise other things would not work anymore properly, of games, that's not reasonable. No.
We've got a final question from Punkit of Unique Indie RPGs, and they asked, how did you get involved with the English release of RM2K3. I think this might be for Cherry. If you're under any NDA, that's cool. What was the decision-making process for adding or streamlining features in the official RM2K3 release?
Well, I got involved by Theia actually reaching out to me and asking if I would be interested in taking part in the English release, since she actually had been trying to push the English release for quite some time at that point, as far as I know. There have been petitions that got quite some support, and there has been some activity going on trying to push an official release of this engine, since it had quite a large English speaking and other languages, of course, community. I want to say community outside of Japan, where it was originally released and the only market it officially had. And so an official way, a way to because people wanted to pay money for it, but there was just no option to do it. You couldn't even purchase it outside of Japan, and you couldn't purchase the 2K3 at all anymore. There was 2K still in sale there was the 2K still for sale in Japan, but not the 2K3. So it was her efforts which pushed it, and then somehow she got the okay and was trying to find a way to make it work, and was looking in my direction to find support, because she knew that I had done all these patches and this stuff before, and I knew the engine's internals better than most people probably. This is how it came to be. I said, okay, yeah, great, of course, this sounds like a great thing. I would love to be part of that. And and then how we added and streamlined the features was also more a process of listening to what the community was asking for. So there were certain things that I don't remember if there was maybe even a thread that was asking about what features would be good to put there or not, but from somewhere there was this info, and then I went and said, okay, what of it is reasonable to put in an initial release, and what could we maybe do later on, and what are my own ideas of what I think should be there. So of course I put some of my patches on this list to say, okay, we want a way to have custom title screen, we want to have pictures whose IDs we can specify through variables, stuff like that. And I was able to just take part of what I did before and integrate it there, and then also only build them for the integration, which was fine with me. Actually, I got money from them for that, but I got a very small amount of money because it was fine for me to actually give them a ridiculously low rate, because I really wanted to do that. It was something that just for me was important enough. That if I was able to put more into this release, even though I wouldn't really get more money for it, or even, as I said, the 1.12 release, which I didn't get any money for it at all, it was something that just I really wanted to do. So in this process, it was more about, okay, what can be done easily, and a little bit about what the community wants, of course. I mean, not a little bit, that was the baseline, but then it had to be technically feasible, obviously. And the only real request from their side was it had to be a bit more modernized and more like the VXAs, which is why the event command names and everything has to be streamlined. All the terminology was streamlined, and the look and feel, as far as I could, was streamlined to be similar to VXAs.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's such a great insight into how the release was came about, and we're really thankful that it actually, for a while there, we were wondering whether it would ever be released, but it sort of was really exciting to see these engines finally come to the English audience, and it was thank you for all your hard work. That was really
at that point, I have to say, really also again, thank you for Theia's work, which was also very hard. I know that.
Absolutely.
And also Sai, I'm not sure if that's the right way to pronounce his name, who also took part in the translation. But I know it was very hard to do this translation. I mean, I assisted in the translation from a technical side, and I did all those improvements, but the actual translation, of course, was done by Theia, who knows Japanese. And it was very hard for her because of the lost source code again. So I had to come up with weird and wonderful ways how to do this anyways. And then also she had to translate the whole help file, which took a long time. And then afterwards, when it was decided that the 2K was also supposed to be released, and we said we're going to use the source code for this, where we had it, because the point was maybe it's getting expanded later and whatever, and we don't want to create another lost source code situation. Not technically lost, but if I start patching the 2K the same way, then we have essentially the same situation that another developer couldn't continue working on it. So then, because it's a totally different scenario now with the source code, the whole translation had to be done again in a certain way. I mean, not totally again from the translating perspective, but from an implementation perspective, because she had to go and then apply all those translations now on a different way inside the source code itself. And then we had to find a way to translate the help file again. We actually took a shortcut and copied the 2K3 help file already translated and adapted it to 2K. That's why there is still a few bugs in there where it refers to something that actually doesn't really work on 2K because we missed it. But she had a hard time during that and was very exhausted at the end. And I have great respect for the work she was able to deliver in quite a short time frame actually to get all this done.
Yeah, Arkea is such a
definitely.
central figure to the community and RPG Maker in general, and I just have endless thanks for them as well. Punkit also says, also one more thing, thank you for helping bring the engine to more people, and thank you so much for tidying up the animation tab. That thing was a nightmare in the unofficial release.
You're welcome, although I don't even remember what exactly was tidied up there, but apparently it was. Happy
so
to
many
hear
things
it.
were tidied up, you don't remember everything that was. So that has been the Q&A from the community, and thank you to our guests for answering all of the questions from our community, and thank you to the community for submitting all these questions. Now we're going to transition into our next segment, which is the deep dive. Welcome to the deep dive. Or should I say it's sort of like a little bit more of a shallow dive, since we've talked about quite a few of these topics in detail, but we're kind of going to do a little bit of a survey over each of the different, I suppose, projects that are of interest, and figure out what we know during the process, inspirations, and elsewise. I don't know how to do this. Maybe we'll start off like chronologically. We'll start with Ineluki's Key Patch, which was sort of like... let me see. So this is a sort of a replacement that allowed full keyboard and mouse input and executing external programs. To my knowledge, you built the key patch for 2000, which worked by replacing the Harmony DLL sound engine library file and intercepting its function calls. And I suppose it was a long time, I suppose, before some people started dabbling in patches. I thought it'd be interesting to hear from Pioneer in regard to how you got how it started to work out for you, and maybe the nitty gritty of the details.
Thanks for the question. But I want to talk about the MP3 patch first, because it was way before the key patch, so the key patch is an extension of the MP3 patch, more or less. And it's on the same basis. So as you told, the main thing is the RPG Maker 2000 had an DLL, so that's a dynamic link library. So this is a collection of functions which are called by the main program. And they are in a special file, and one has the ability to get the names of all these functions, say from the properties window of Windows, for example. At least it was in Windows 95 the case, to get it like this. But then the parameters were still missing, how to call these functions. And by examining this DLL, I realized, well, this is the library which is dealing with all the music stuff. And it had one very interesting function, which is get MIDI tick. So one could get the position of the playing music in ticks or seconds, and import this as a number back. This will be important later for the key patch. And the rest of the stuff was more or less functions for initializing everything, a function for playing a music file, which was given as a string, and so on and so on. So I thought, well, there's no way to play MP3s in the original RPG Maker 2K. And we only had MIDI files and WAV files. And due to WAV files, everything was very big, or they could only be used very sporadically. And back then, MP3 was a hot topic. It was a new file format, and the internet wasn't as fast as today. And so uploading a file took ages. And so every megabyte you could save is a benefit. And so my first question, as I mentioned earlier, was how can I use MP3 instead of WAV? And since the answer was not at all, I thought, okay, here I have this library which can play music. And it's called harmony.dll. What if I write my own DLL, which implements the same interface, so all the other functions, and the functions which I do not need myself, I just use from a different DLL, which is then the original Harmony DLL, which will be renamed as Old Harmony DLL, and I pass everything through, except for some functions which I want to extend, which are then the functions for playing a music file and getting a file name. Okay, still, there was no way to play MP3s because you cannot select them in the dialog. Okay, of course, one could hack the dialog itself, but I wasn't aware of this back then. And so I just thought, I could use a different file where the extension is WAV, but it's also not WAV. So I created file names like filename.link.wav, which are essentially text files with a path to the MP3 file I want to play and some other options if it should be looped or not and the likes. And whenever such a file name popped in this function, I knew that I have to run my own code, and otherwise I just use the functions of the original one. And later on I extended this to use files like filename.script.wav for extending the MP3 patch to run text files which were in the script.wav files to set up the keyboard options, so that or the mouse options to activate the logging of the keystrokes and the mouse movements, or to disable that and the likes. So still there was this problem when I want to type something in using the keys or using the mouse, I have to get numbers inside of the maker. But accessing the variables of the maker directly is not easy. And this was the main problem which I encountered there. But there was this MIDI-tick function, get MIDI-tick function. And interestingly, I very seldomly saw a game with the maker which uses this for its intended purposes to synchronize events with music. I do not know if I really saw any game use this, but since you could extract one number, that is the position of the music, I knew that keyboard strokes and mouse positions could be injected into the RPG Maker itself. So by repeatedly calling get MIDI tick, one could ask, hey, what's their keystroke? Or what is the mouse position? And so I created a stack of those numbers. So a stack that is, no, it's a queue, sorry. A queue, so first in, first out, with events. And one had to register, say that if K was pressed, send a 10. If L is pressed, send an 11. Or something. And if K is released, send a different number. Or call a script to get the position of the mouse. And then this number will be put into the queue, and by getting the get MIDI tick function, one part of this queue was emptied and put into a maker variable. There you have it.
I think it's such a interesting kind of idea to create that from scratch. And I can't remember, Pepsi said at one time in the chat, I don't know if it was using the key patch or if it was using something else. You said at the time you wrote a little Ace Attorney engine tech demo.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that happened. So I lost that project in a hard drive crash 2 years ago, sadly. But what that was basically before DynRPG came around. I was using this other patch called Power Mode, and that was basically the 2K3 version of what you were talking about, Luki, with adding like mouse and keyboard support and more keys and stuff like that. And I think it added OGG support, if I remember correctly. But so I was using that for a while with Everlasting Journey. It was okay. But with that little Ace Attorney thing, I basically like ripped a bunch of graphics or used... I don't know if I ripped them. No, okay. I don't think I ripped them myself. I think I got them from this website that basically hosted them. Someone else ripped them. Yeah. And I basically like strung them together and recreated like the menu in kind of a 320 by 240 space, because it was a different resolution on the DS. So, and then just had a couple like interactions with characters and things like that. And that's pretty much it. But it had used the mouse and keyboard functionality of Power Mode, so that, because like on the DS you're using the stylus, but in this, you're basically just using the mouse. Yeah. So, I don't know. It was neat. I didn't turn it into a thing or anything. I didn't turn it into a fan game or anything, but
I guess so. What it is. Well, we'll kind of also move on to, like, I suppose, DynRPG and Cherry, but also all the plugins that you created, Pepsi. I mean, the ones that you created, and your plugin Emporium that you kind of... advertised and put forward for people to make their own plugins. I suppose at one time the number of DynRPG plugins was a bit smaller, but then did you do like some sort of promotional drive to try and get people to make all these plugins?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much, yeah. I was just really, I was on a creative streak at the time for writing DynRPG plugins and learning C++. And basically I kind of went from thing to thing. I, had like this internal list of things that I wanted to see in RPG Maker 2003. And, I was like, okay, can I do this? And it basically started with that question and kind of looking through those DynRPG header files and figuring out what does what and what can help me get to that goal, essentially. There were definitely like some hacky things that I did with like, the menus, there's a couple like menu plugins that there's literally just like, okay, you're going to open a ping and you're going to edit a ping graphic a certain way and it'll show up in your menu correctly. Like that was basically what the time plugin kind of did, because like at the time DynRPG couldn't, you couldn't like create your own windows, like little like windows.
You
within
added
the UI, yeah. And so that was something that was added in through Bug Me Not and I when we did our big DynRPG update. But it was never like really mature. Like there was a lot of stuff we couldn't figure out, or like, you know, I basically just didn't give it enough time, kind of thing, because I was looking at other stuff. And adding like OpenGL support was like a big kind of goal. I was like, man, I just want it to render better. Like you know, it was basically getting up to like Windows 10 and Windows 7, and like when you launch like 2K3 in this, it basically used direct draw in the background, and it was very slow on some machines, especially in Windows 10. For whatever reason, like when you tried to start the game in full screen, it would just be, you would just have to wait for like 30 seconds or something, and you'd stare at a white screen almost.
Also, it messed up all your maximized windows afterwards.
Yep. There's lots of weird like window management type stuff that was just weird about it. And so that was the drive to make like the OpenGL plugin. And I kind of like took a shortcut with that plugin. I just used the framework SFML to like create the window and the OpenGL context.
Yeah.
And that kind of like opened the door into like making engines and figuring out like how to make engines, right? So that's like step one. That's like really step one is, how do I make a window in the operating system? Okay, great. How do I add like a drawing context? How do I draw into that window?
Yeah, actually, I'll and also say like, let's go into game engines as well, because you're creating your own game engine using C++. And Cherry, I suppose, created, I think, was it a wrapper for RPG Maker? It was RPG Maker 2009? Was it a sort of, it utilized the existing engine a bit? Or how did that work?
Yeah, okay, this is a totally different thing.
Right.
RPG Maker 2009 Ultimate is not a game engine. It's just like a top hat put on top of RPG Maker 2000 or 2003. What it does, it's a tool that basically hooks and modifies some stuff in the editor that it can run with any version. I mean, not with the official one. I tested it; it crashes. Didn't yet figure out why, but there's just too much different, I guess. But it's basically like attaching to it in memory when you run it. It doesn't modify the files actually on the hard disk, and just basically injects itself and changes some stuff in the UI and adds some functionality to it this way. So it does some things like allows subfolders for resources, which works because the game engine doesn't really care about whether there is a backslash in the path name or not. It will just put it all together and pass it to Windows. So I was able to implement features like these, which work regardless of whether the engine supports it, because I sort of like found ways to either improve the editing experience in the editor, like I added the go-to map window and stuff like that for easily searching for maps by name, or by utilizing things that just happen to work, like the subfolder thing. So I give a UI to something that wasn't really intended to be used this way, like having a path with a backslash inside of it, but it works in the engine, even though it knows nothing about subfolders per se, so I can make a feature out of it. There are other things like that, like the no steps while moving movement option, which is just like a number that is normally not used, but due to the way that it checks for specific parts, like it's divisible by 2 and stuff like that, it just happens to create the effect that it does. Things like that. It was aimed to especially just allow those few nice additions, but in overall, it's more about improving the editor experience. So you can have colored event commands, you can have larger windows, you can do things like what I said, searching for the map and this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I might have mistook that there for, but I suppose it's an entirely different kettle of fish to what Pepsi was talking about creating your own engine. You're creating your own engine of it was like 2D game engine with C++. How's that been going? Has it been going quite successfully, or has there been some struggles that you've been coming across?
Yeah. One thing I just want to add real quick on what Cherry was talking about. Basically, like you want to separate your actual game engine with the editor, right? Those are two separate like executables. So he's talking about like an editor replacement.
Yeah, but not even replacement. I was talking about that the thing that I called RPG Maker 2009 Ultimate was just basically a thing that modifies the RPG Maker 2000 and 2003 editor a little bit. It doesn't change the engine, and it's not supposed to be a new engine or even a new editor. I just called it like that, I don't know, for fun, and I thought it would be
yeah.
It is a fun name.
But yeah, basically, like when you think about like other game engines like Unity or Godot or something like that, there's always like the editor, right? And the actual game engine itself. What's like behind the scenes is like a different story. This is what I'm making is more of a framework that I can use for games in general. I'm not making an editor. I'm not making I'm not making like tools per se at this stage.
And it's generalized. It's not just for racing. It's for any 2D games.
Yeah, so it's similar to monogame, like when I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Momeka's game is using monogame for what he's doing. But what I found annoying was that like with monogame, that's like a framework that can get you like your window and your drawing context pretty quickly, and there's all sorts of like game focused things inside of it. But you're writing in C# and you have no control over memory access, and it's a bad time if you're coming from C++, basically. So I found that frustrating. So I was like, well, what's like the C++ version of that? And then it's like, oh, there really isn't one. There's SDL, which is going to help you create the window and the drawing context and allow you to create things from a variety of different renderers, not just OpenGL, but like DirectX, Metal on Mac OS, and Vulkan, right?
Right.
And yeah, sorry, I don't know. Probably haven't heard of some of these, but
yeah, I'll have to do some Googling after this, but
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, there's one called Vulkan.
Right.
And there's another framework called SFML, which is what I used in that OpenGL plugin for DynRPG, which is SFML is like a lot quicker and easier. It's got a nice API, right? Whereas SDL is like is built around C actually, so it's usable in C++, but it's just a different API. However, like SDL has more features. So with my game engine, I wanted to basically. Oh, one of the other things about SDL that I want to mention is that like SDL has amazing input capabilities. Like it basically has like a database of controllers that gets managed by an open source community that you can basically get any controller working with your game.
Right.
So that's like super powerful as opposed to SFML, which has crap capabilities for input. Like some of the things in SFML are a little too simplistic. And so what I ended up doing for my game engine was like I started off with SFML. And then I like ended up forking it. This is going to get technical. I apologize.
Yeah, it's fine.
I ended up forking SFML and basically writing a abstraction for creating an SDL window. So basically there's like an interface behind the scenes that you can implement into a class that says this is how my window is going to get created. And then I basically wrote that into my engine, or I basically took that into my engine, and then I'm also linking it against SDL. So I use SDL to actually create the window, and then SFML creates the OpenGL context, and then I can basically and then SDL also handles window events. Window events basically take care of like any sort of like interaction you have with the window or any sort of like input device against the window.
Right.
And yeah, so I basically had to write all that stuff. And I was finally able to use that amazing controller database and get a nice C++ API to kind of write my code with.
Yeah.
So
wow.
it's a big project. I've loved every minute of it. There's also like a ton of other stuff in there, like content management that is basically pretty central to writing game engines as well. You basically have to you don't want to just load images and sounds and things at will. You kind of want to load them all up front, or at least load what you need up front, and then free it later, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weird stuff like that I had to figure out, and like I said, it's been a lot of fun.
Such great conversation, but we could go on forever, not forever, but on and on about details. But hopefully that's just a nice little taste of what the deep dive into what each developer has done here. And I think we'll kind of transition into the plugging or promotion section now. But I think I ask every guest before we finish one last question to sort of just sum it all up. And this is the question. If you had one thing to say to the listener today, what would it be?
Never stop game making.
Nice.
Stay curious.
Yes.
I may be the killjoy here, but I guess I'd say stay not only creative, but stay at home.
Yes.
Stay safe, yeah.
Very good.
Stay safe and healthy.
Definitely.
It's not very much a killjoy thing. In fact, you're inspiring joy by asking people to stay home. So I think that's a good thing to consider in the long term.
Stay home and make on.
Yeah, stay
Right,
home, make
actually.
games. Thank you for being on the podcast. PepsiOtaku, Cherry, and Ineluki, it has been a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a blast. Thank you.
So here's the part of the podcast where you can plug or promote anything you'd like here. Anything that's coming up for you. How can we contact you? How can we follow what you're doing? If you have a Twitter or any socials.
You follow me on Twitter at PepsiOtaku.
You can follow me also on Twitter at CherryDT. I post random funny stuff and some things about RPG Maker if I actually do something about it. And I want about promoting in general. I guess I just remembered there are two things that could benefit people more if they would know about. That could benefit people more if they would know about it. One of it I mentioned before already briefly, which is Unidebug, which can come in handy for all kinds of situations. For even when you're playing somebody's RPG Maker game and it's actually a crappy game and you are stuck or something like that, or debugging your own game. And the other thing is RM Event Factory, which I think not enough people know about. It's a tool that works through the clipboard to allow you to modify, basically create in a batch, create event code, either event codes itself or pages or whole events based on specific formulas. So you can do a template and you can say basically, for example, loop from this to there, or you can even load stuff from a CSV file and then batch create code or events from that. Can be useful for all kinds of things. And the last thing in that regard is the official RPG Maker 2003 does allow you to copy event code as text and paste it in a forum. You don't need to create a screenshot for event code over there. I think that most people don't know that.
So that's Unidebug by Cherry, and that's also RM Event Factory, all one word, by Cherry as well. So you can just go to Cherry's website, cherrytree.at, to find all.
Actually,
all
I think you
stuff.
don't find Unidebug there yet, but you can Google it. You will find it.
You find it on Makerpendium, maybe. I don't know. Or RPG Atelier. Anyway, yes.
So yeah. I'm not very big on social media, so the best way to contact me would be to write me a PM in Multimediaxis.de forum. And I want to give a shout out to the Makerpendium.de of Monturion, which is a wiki for everything RPG Maker related. I think most parts are in German, but they have a very big database of all RPG Maker games they get their hands on. Not only German ones, but internationally. So if you have something to document, maybe you drop them a note, and I guess they will be happy to add your works there.
Cool. Yeah, go check out all that stuff and go, shouts out to everyone who got shouted out. And I'd also like to promote RPG Maker Cola, the podcast you are currently listening to. Go check out some episodes. I know we mentioned Don Miguel earlier on. Don Miguel has a mini-sode which should be released at the time of this episode. So go check out that little interview. And go check out all the stuff. Join our Discord and listen to episodes. And thank you so much also for being a great listener to RPG Maker Cola, your favorite RPG Maker podcast. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.